Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the evil Theocratic World Domination Conspiracy Livestream. With me today is Fritz Imperial,
Hello.
a crazy guy who thinks that he is Kaiser Wilhelm with 3D glasses.
I don't think I know.
Okay. And I am Benjamin McLean.
You think you're Captain Moroni.
Yeah, something like that. The 3D glasses would just be too small to fit on his head on this picture. Anyway, today we are just hanging out. I haven't done a video on my channel in ages. And
I did one a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, but those who just can't wait for the next Ben McLean video should check out the Marxists with Hats parody that's over on the Distributists channel. It's a great cartoon. It's pretty much the best thing ever. So check it out.
Do it. It's certainly better than the one I did a voice for, because you did a voice for that. I did a voice for the Crowton T gets hit by a truck video that was also on that. And that one was like, the animation was very surreal. It was very odd.
Okay. That one was okay. I mean, it was I don't think it was as funny as Marxists with Hats. But
it wasn't.
It was okay though. So this is pretty casual and unstructured today.
We're not wearing pants.
If people come in on the chat, we'll, I think, want to respond to the live chat. I'm trying to make sure to have it open. I'd appreciate it if you'd open the chat as well, Fritz, and
yep, I have it.
So that if I'm not paying attention to it, if you could give me a reminder too, if I lose track of it. If there's anybody who wants to join and you're not a Nazi, then we'll probably give you an invite link, or maybe later
you're gonna have to kick me off the stream.
Maybe later we might actually invite almost anyone on, and just to make fun of them towards the end. Well, Fritz, you supported Germany in World War I, but you weren't you wouldn't have supported the Nazis.
No, obviously not. I think broadly though, my thoughts on the Second World War are that similar to the first, maybe to lesser degrees and increasing degrees in areas, that all sides were still led by assholes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, both sides are led by politicians, so that's kind of a given for the whole political class.
Mm-hmm.
And that,
I don't think Stalin was really a politician, though.
Who?
No, he didn't get elected.
Who?
Well, Stalin.
Oh, well, Stalin was a Russian-style politician.
And also, the Japanese were led by the military, not politicians.
Well, in a military dictatorship, the generals are politicians. But yeah, anyways, that leads us into what I think would be our first actual topic, and that is election reform. Or
general thoughts on elections and the political process.
Right. Now, this is something I've talked about before, but I think it's always good for a nice conversation, and that is, I think that in America we have a fundamentally wrong idea about elections and voting, which is that somehow it is inherently good or virtuous to vote as opposed to not voting. And that when an election has a low turnout, therefore it is a bad election. And that a higher turnout is better for some reason.
Yeah, I actually wholeheartedly agree, unfortunately, because, well, I say unfortunately because then what are we going to actually talk about? But you say a low turnout does not mean it's a bad election. It means there are bad candidates.
Well, a low turnout could mean a number of different things. One thing it could mean is that the people are mostly content. They're so content that they don't care about who wins. Mm-hmm. And that means that would that would mean that a low turnout would be an indicator of a high degree of success for a government.
Mm-hmm.
If the reason there's low turnout at the elections is because the people are prosperous and happy and they don't care who wins.
Also,
Because they're
if you're not in
fine.
Australia, where they force you to vote.
Yeah, that's completely nutty. It's totally contrary to the basic idea of voting to force people to vote. What the
You
hell?
also think about this as like at the very at least for Australia they have multiple parties that their Labour Party, which is their left-wing party, and their Liberal Party, which is ironically their Conservative Party. They generally have a fairly good chance at winning the election. Whereas if you had this situation in a country like Japan where I don't think that they, as far as I'm aware, they don't have compulsory voting laws, but they essentially do have a one-party system in that the Liberal Democratic Party, a center-right party, has won almost every election since the end of the war. Like the socialist, their Social Democrat Party has only won a couple elections, but everything else has been dominated by one party. So imagine if you had that situation, because it's so center, and the Japanese have not really had anywhere near the same social issues as a lot of Western countries have in regards to immigration and such. And because it's not really a Western country. But imagine if you combine that with compulsory voting. So you now have a one-party system where you have to vote.
That's wow. One thing I've often considered is the idea of a universal no party, one where the candidates promise to vote no on every issue, regardless of context.
I think that could just be like the pirate party, like they have in Germany.
I will be a representative, and I will vote no on every question, no matter what the question is.
Anyway. I think it's still time to revive the anti-Masonic party. The party that was built because the guy who basically inspired it, William Morgan, in the early 1800s, wrote a pamphlet or essay exposing, he was an ex-Mason, exposing all the horrible and dangerous rights those people did, and they actually assassinated him for it. And so all that backlash led to a party, an actual political party, whose stance was, certain reform issues, anti-slavery, but their big one is exposing the Freemasons. So it would have been a party that Alex Jones would have been very much in favor of.
Hey, it turns out that the chat doesn't the chat inside of our Hangout isn't the same chat as the YouTube live chat. So you actually have to go to my YouTube channel, to that page, to see that people have been saying things.
Yeah, I typed in it.
Okay. Wow. I didn't realize that until just now. Hello, everybody. It's amazing that we have at least 4 people watching.
11 people, actually.
Everybody wants to talk about more.
Yeah, I think that's the elephant in the room. And
okay, well, since Buckley isn't on, and I don't think he's able to remain civil talking about more, I'll discuss Roy Moore a little bit.
Okay.
I think he was framed. I don't think he did it. And I think the reason that all these women are coming forward is because they don't like his stances. They wanted him to lose the election, and I think it's really that simple. I think that the GOP did the right thing in backing him, because that sends a message that if you're going to take somebody down, you have to bring proof. If you don't bring proof, you don't get to take them down. We've got to be very firm on that with the Democrats, because if we once start caving to accusations made without evidence, then we are going to have accusations left and right against every single Republican.
I've heard that. I've actually heard that. Somebody was talking about that on Twitter. I actually really agree. That is probably going to be because I don't think Roy Moore lost the election because of this. I think he lost it because he did not run a good campaign. I think he forgot to read the story of the tortoise and the hare, where if you look at the election, Doug Jones, slow and steady, kept campaigning really, really hard, and it paid off and he won. Whereas Roy Moore, for the past several weeks, did nothing. And
well, he couldn't do anything.
Well,
I mean,
he wasn't actually that hamstrung. He was not. I mean, the president effectively campaigned for him. He had a whole rally there.
Okay, but I mean, he was severely limited in what he could do, because
I wouldn't say so.
Because if the accusations come up in any context that he's unprepared for, then that becomes a new national story. Mm-hmm. And it just redirects anything he's trying to say to be about the accusations.
You don't think he could give a? You don't think he could give a? The thing is, the people that were going to vote. First off, it was very close, right? It was within 2%, and secondly, the thing is, he could have campaigned and held rallies to get support of among his base, conservative white conservatives in Alabama, who are pretty much most Alabamans, to go out and vote. The thing is that they didn't go out and vote. Black people, African Americans, did go out and vote. And again, he you can't really blame him for thinking he had this in the bag, because he's a Republican running for Senate in Alabama. Normally this is a no-brainer, but because I think he didn't campaign hard enough, it cost him this election.
Okay. Scott McKines in the chat asks, have you seen Godless Cranium's Imagine a World Without Religion video? No,
because I respect my computer's monitor too much.
No, I have not. I have long thought of doing some kind of satire of John Lennon's Imagine, though.
I still love Ben Shapiro's takedown of that song, where he just explains how it's about the most evil, immoral, progressive anthem ever written.
I think the best response to Imagine that I've ever heard was another song by the band Thrice called Lullaby. It actually got into one of the Burnout games on PSP, I think. And it's basically a post-hardcore rock song that basically says, what are we all living for if nothing's worth dying for? Mm-hmm. And you need to have real love in your life, and that means having things you'd be willing to die for.
I think, I sort of like a lot of the sort of responses, because after Bob Dylan became an evangelical Christian, he responded to the Beatles song, or was this, it may have been after they broke up, but to the song Serve Yourself, he said he had his song, You've Got to Serve Somebody.
Let me see. That's Serve Yourself. That doesn't sound like that's John Lennon. That's not the Beatles. Okay. So it's post being ruined by Yoko Ono. Mm-hmm. The Beatles were good, and then Yoko Ono ruined them. That's you can't join. Distributus can't join because he's at work.
I know.
Right. So.
All right. Oh yeah, it's only
hubris brought down Clinton and more, says someone. Never think you have something in the bag.
Again, that's the story of the tortoise and the hare.
I don't know. I don't know if Moore could have done much better than he did against such a vast national firestorm of press attacking him as a child molester. I mean, I don't think that there's any way he could have done much better than he did. Just Distributus.
Oh yeah, I guess I had it in reverse. If the Beatles, John Lennon wrote that in response to Bob Dylan.
Well, the Beatles went down. What John actually said was that the Beatles were more famous than Jesus, and at the time, that was absolutely true. I mean, he said something that was true. So that particular remark, I don't think was offensive at all. I think it was mm-hmm. It was accurate. So I'm not. How do you say? I'm not actually upset.
Outraged.
I'm not outraged by that comment. But John Lennon's political leanings that came along later after the Beatles broke up are where he really went downhill. I think of the four Beatles, I think Paul's solo work was probably the best. I really liked Live and Let Die. That was a great track. And a few of the other, like Band on the Run was a good song. There's a few other good Paul McCartney songs post Beatles that I actually like. And Electric Light Orchestra really picked up where the Beatles left off in a lot of ways.
The thing that I actually find interesting is that apparently Ringo Starr is sort of a conservative.
Really? I wasn't aware of that.
At the very least, he came out in favor of Brexit.
Professor Farnsworth says the GOP effed more. And I don't know. That's not actually true. Trump campaigned for more, and the Republican National Committee, who are usually spineless as hell, actually continued to back more through the whole election, which that took some guts. And
the thing
I actually respect that. Of course, I respect that because I think Moore was innocent.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's no way we could have known that he's guilty if he is guilty. I don't think he is, but if he is, there's no way we can know it.
Mm-hmm. Especially now, since the election's over, I'm pretty sure these allegations are going to mysteriously vanish.
Well, I think they're probably going to fade out of the public consciousness because the purpose of them was electoral. Okay, how many people want to join? We can probably send out. I can probably send out some invites real quick. Are you guys on my Discord? I will post a Discord link for you guys. And if you get on my Discord, then I'll send you a link to join as a private message. Okay, guys? So I'm going to copy the link. What happened to my caps lock? Join my Discord to request to come on the stream.
But the only issue is with this, right? Is I don't have anything personally against the people in the chat, but oftentimes when this happens, it ends up you get 8 people that all raise their hands and say, "I don't know." They speak a lot, but they have nothing to say.
Yeah,
they're like me.
Okay, well,
okay, so let's get back to something interesting.
Yeah, if Distributist wants to join, I've already sent him a link, just so you guys in the chat are aware.
I think he's just at work, though.
Yeah, he's at work. That's why he can't come on. So it is anytime he wants to come on, he can. And for those of you who would really like to come on, I have. You can. Distributor says I can't. Oh yeah, he says I can't join. I'm assuming that's because he's at work. If it's because, yeah, that's it. That's what he's saying. All right. That makes sense. Okay. So enough that. Are you assuming I want to join your Discord or your chat? Racist, sexist. Okay, that's funny. The reason I'm having people join the Discord is so I can send them private messages with the link, because I don't want to post the link publicly so that just anyone can come in. Because
to help that's actually useful to help filter this. Yeah,
and we might do that towards the end of the stream, where we might have an open line Friday kind of thing.
Send a link to 4chan.
Anyone can come in and we can send the link to 4chan, which is pretty funny. Oh, okay.
Can we talk about the
in the middle of the night? We're across the pond. It's not the middle of the night here.
Oh yeah, the Croatian wants to talk.
Someone says that on the Discord. Okay, I'm gonna send out some invites. Here is link to join stream.
You know what's weird? I've had Weird Al's parody of I Want It That Way by, I think, the Backstreet Boys. His parody, I bought it on eBay, stuck in my head for a long time.
Oh, that one is a total earworm.
Yeah.
Okay,
No, we're not in England. We're in America.
Okay, I'm here.
Awesome. Good to see you.
Nice. How are you doing?
You're not the alt-right crocodile. That's Jolly Crocodile.
No, I'm the Mormon crocodile.
Okay.
Lord. I have this icon. It's my way of showing support towards the monarchy.
Okay. Wait, a monarchist Mormon. I don't know how that works.
Well, the way it works is you appoint a king, and then before too long, you end up in bondage. That's how it works.
Some people like that, though.
Monarchists are into BDSM, according to the Book of Mormon, anyway.
Mm-hmm. Wait, so we have an LDS and an RLDS. Maybe this.
Don't worry. We won't fight about it. We actually get in far more heated arguments over 2D and 3D Sonic.
Yeah, I gotta say, 3D Sonic has always been bad.
Bullshit. The adventure games are far much more enjoyable, especially Adventure 2. That's probably one of my favorite.
Sonic Adventure DX is an acid trip, man.
I always like the Dreamcast version a bit better, but that's just me.
Well, I had a GameCube, so.
Yeah.
But I think I did actually like the character selection thing of how, you would unlock characters and you could do their campaigns in any order you wanted.
Yeah.
But it progressively got more and more terrible because it ended with Sonic and Tails having fairly normal running missions like an actual Sonic game. Knuckles is like, hey, go find these crystals in these gigantic levels.
I don't really mind that.
Run away from a robot, and then Big the Cat is a fishing game.
Yeah, that was.
Wow. I didn't mean to get into a really long discussion of the Sonic games.
Yeah, true. We're in the evil theocratic world domination conspiracy, not the generic Sonic complaining club.
Yeah, but Sonic Forces was still bad though.
Anyway, and Sonic Mania was good.
Yes. Anyways, I
haven't played that one either.
I'm just goofing.
I'm saving up. I'm waiting for. I think I asked for Oxygen Not Included for Christmas because that game looks good.
Yeah. Well,
it's by the same people that made Don't Starve.
Let me make sure who else joined the Discord. Oh, okay, that guy can't join. Okay, I think I sent links to everybody who was requesting one so far.
Austin, the missionaries.
Hold on. Great, my family's talking. Hold on.
All right. So, anyways, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, elections. So yeah. I've often thought that whenever you have a person voting in an election who is uninformed on the issues, then that vote makes the election worse. Every uninformed vote makes the election worse. So the thing to do is, instead of campaigning that people should go vote, well, let me back up. It makes sense for the Republicans to campaign to encourage Republicans to go vote. And it makes sense for the Democrats to campaign to encourage Democrats to go vote. What doesn't make sense is groups like Rock the Vote, which campaign to get young people to go vote generically. I mean, they claim that they're a nonpartisan organization. And they're just...
Yeah, that's what I thought when I first watched that Save the Day thing by celebrities last year before the election. I thought that's what it was supposed to be like. Go ahead and vote and be bipartisan. No, it was again to say that Trump is evil and Hitler, and so I had to make fun of them.
Yeah.
Had to be done.
Right. Well, organizations that just generically encourage voting, I think, are sending the wrong message. What they ought to say is that people who haven't studied shouldn't vote. It should say, look, if you haven't really studied the issues, you're not really into politics, just don't bother voting. because, leave the voting to people who have actually paid attention and have some idea who they're voting for.
Oh, have you guys read the book Starship Troopers?
No, it's
guaranteed.
That's
no,
basically
that
is
was
basically what the culture is, and people called its author a Nazi because of that. Because like his world was like you had to either do like service, like either in the military, community-based service, stuff like that, before you get your voting rights. And people call him a Nazi because of it.
Wow, that seems a little extreme. It doesn't seem all that unreasonable to say that people. It doesn't seem
like
all that unreasonable to say that
you actually have a stake in the war. If like you only get a vote if you actually like give a crap about like your community.
I think though, actually, like I think there's probably merit to that. The thing you have to accept though is that if you have that system in which you have to earn the ability to vote, it's no longer a right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or at least it's no longer a natural right. Anyway.
I don't think it ever really was a natural right to begin with, though.
Yeah, but people have started to treat it as though it was a natural right.
So. And they also treat it like it's the. It seems they tend to treat it like it's the only valid form of political expression.
Yeah.
That and protesting, but one of the things.
What do you mean? I'm confused.
Well, I mean, go ahead and tell anybody that's over the age of 30 that you don't think voting is a smart. That you shouldn't vote, or you say, well, I live in a democratic state, so I shouldn't vote because it doesn't matter, or I hate both candidates, so I'm not going to vote. They think you're evil.
You are a centrist.
There are actually Christian pastors that you can find videos of them that say that if you don't vote, that's actually a sin because you are not rendering unto Caesar what's owed to him. And I'm like, fuck you. I'm sorry for the language, but I don't have any patience for that.
I think there's some little kids in the apartment above me who are like stomping around and crashing into walls.
No, I really shouldn't have sworn.
So that's, if you hear any banging noises, that's probably why.
Wait, are you sure it was? Are you sure it wasn't little kids, and not people making little kids?
No, it doesn't sound like that kind of banging.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like footfalls running back and forth, and that indicates children.
Okay. But yeah, the idea is that I think that there are certain cases in which not voting can be an even more powerful political expression than voting can be.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But I think that what we have to look at is you should only vote if you're not... Your candidate being able to win is actually not as important in your impetus to vote as is there a reasonable chance that they can affect policy change? And for many conservatives, the Republican Party does not seem capable of doing that. Now, the idea that politicians never listen to their voters, that they're all corrupt, the thing is, Democrats have absolutely managed to get their policies enacted, right? Republicans haven't.
Operate under using like minority groups and like people, and then trying
and the fact that they control the entirety of the education system and the media.
Yeah, basically a lot of subversion and manipulation tactics. Went really quiet.
But
okay, I was just responding to something in the chat. He said, for monarchy to work, one man must be wise. For democracy to work, a majority of people must be wise. Which is more likely? And I responded, for monarchy to work, one man's son must be wise. For democracy to work, a majority of the people must choose someone wise. Which is more likely? And I think it's more likely for the majority of the people to choose someone wise than it is for one man's son to happen to turn out to be
ironically the majority of
his father was.
Ironically, the majority of the people in the chat are saying monarchy is the wiser choice.
Yeah, well, I can definitely see that because like some people like I love Trump and all that, but like he basically got in by just making a lot of noise and acting like
there isn't. I think you could say that if it wasn't just because of the. I think maybe what the lesson conservatives should learn from this last election, not the Trump, the Moore versus Jones one, is that there are limits to populism. That populism is not like the idea that there was a mass populist wave that was just hiding under the surface. That's not that got Trump elected and now they're in power. It's going to fix everything. I don't think that's true. I think that, you know, first off, remember Trump.
That's not going to keep on working for them. Yeah. I don't think,
because the thing is, Trump lost. Guess what happened? Trump and Moore lost the popular vote, but Trump won because we have a electoral college. Now, I don't disagree with the electoral college. I understand why it's important to have it, but the fact is, the idea that there isn't a silent majority in this country. If you could have made the case during Nixon's time, but not now.
Well, I think that there's a majority who doesn't have. I think there's a majority who has more in common with people like Roy Moore than they have in common with red hair dye wearing SJW bitches from California.
Right.
The problem is that I think one of the reasons why, or probably the biggest reason why American society seems to be coming apart, is that there really isn't in the 1950s, the reason why there was such high stability in the first couple decades of the post-war era is because you have the post-war social consensus of what it meant to be a part of American society. That really doesn't exist anymore. And it didn't really fully exist in the 50s either, because you had roughly 90% of the country was white, and there effectively was a consensus, but you still had, I'm not an SJW here, but you still had, because there still was actual real racism, about 10 to 12% of the black population that understood that they were considered a second-class citizen until, decades later. And around that same time, I don't think it's because of this. I think it's because of the other social changes, like the sexual revolution, that, once African Americans, gained access to equal rights, the American consensus began breaking apart, and it's been doing that for the past 40 to 50 years.
Sorry, I have trouble listening and typing at the same time.
Yeah, me too. I'm not going to repeat it, though.
So, anyways, about the whole monarchy question, there's the biggest.
Stop typing. I was talking to you about something actually more interesting or more relevant, and it was the fact, and it's something we would actually be able to talk about. Distributus is even typing. We should talk about the fact that the post-war consensus, the post-war American culture, has been coming apart for the past 50 years, and that's one of the big problems, right? That's one of the
we've discussed that before, though. I mean, I don't know if there's anything new to say on that as of this year.
But related to this election is the fact that Trump's election sort of reinforced the false idea that a lot of conservatives have, that there is still a post-war consensus, that the majority of the people still hold to a sort of fairly moderate conservative standpoint, and that they were just lying under the surface and they need to be woken up. I don't really think that exists. I think a significant portion of the population does hold these views, but they're dying quickly, and they're shrinking as a demographic, not only because they're aging, but also because of immigration.
There's enough of that in certain states like Alabama that you can still reasonably run a campaign on it like Roy Moore did and get very, very near to winning.
The thing is, though, he really shouldn't have lost because, again, this is Alabama.
Hey, you guys, I'll be right back in like 30 seconds, okay?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Data's probably Distributus. I wouldn't fault you for leaving. I maybe we should talk about culture, but I don't know any specifics. I mean, talking about culture is I am not going to see the new Star Wars movie.
Yeah, no, I'm going to be working during that time, so.
And I mean, maybe if my dad wants to see it, it'd be nice.
I know my stepdad's going to go see it. He's a big Star Wars fan. Though tomorrow they're actually doing a thing where they're airing all the Star Wars movies and then airing the new one. It's going to be
I'm feeling a bit. Oh, are you back, Ben?
Yeah, I'm back. And
I was discussing how I am totally not watching the new Star Wars movie.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to watch it in the theaters. I think I'm going to wait for it to come out on video.
You'll be waiting a long time because it's been a dead medium for about 15 years.
Home video doesn't necessarily mean VHS.
I know. Now available to own on video cassette.
Yeah, well, home video includes any number of formats.
On video cassette, does anyone know?
Oh, they kept making VHSs for a long time. I think it was only recently they really quit making VHSs. Of course, they didn't distribute them in North America for a long time. But it was in, like, I don't know, South America, India, places like that. They were still distributing VHSs, at least until the late 2010s.
I was blown away enough by... I again, this sounds odd, even coming from somebody who's, sort of on board with the whole... I'm getting sick of the whole Marvel, Disney, Star Wars, all of this sort of pop culture stuff that's, this pretty much the same movie over and over again. Even though, like, my caveat is I loved Rogue One, and I don't care what anybody says. I love that movie.
Rogue One was actually pretty good. I don't know about love, but it was a pretty good movie. It had a minimum of SJW retardedness, which episode 7 really cranked up to the max.
Jyn Erso, the main character of Rogue One, was not as much of a Mary Sue because, like, first off, she actually did some. She actually, her being skilled in certain areas, like being able to shoot a gun, right?
Well,
it would sort of make sense.
I think we've gone like way off topic to be going deeply into Star Wars. We were talking about the silent majority issue.
Oh, well, it's not really an issue. I just don't think it exists anymore.
Yeah, and I was saying, I think you can still run campaigns on that in states like Alabama, where it's there's demographics that'll back it up. But you do have to have candidates that are a little bit more mainstream in normal states, and you have to have really moderate centrist people if you want to win in places like California and New York, where there's, that's the left-wing strongholds.
Republican winning in New York. Well, we did have a Republican governor like 15 years ago. I don't know how, and Rudy Giuliani was the mayor of New York City.
Yeah, I mean, there's potential to win there. But in places like that, you have to. That's where you run moderates. It's. I wouldn't have the RNC spending a whole bunch of money there, though.
I would just rather the RNC spent money on, like, funding conservative schools and conservative media. I think that's way more worthwhile.
So
what I was going to say is that you did bring up a good point, though, right?
The chat's going completely nuts here. I don't know what they're even talking about anymore.
8F. Okay, it's a code. Well, we know Ted Cruz was the Zodiac killer, so he can crack it for us.
Yeah.
But
somebody said where to go to find free movies. I might say you might check out ettv.tv if you like.
In the chat.
If you like to steal money from huge evil corporations by downloading their movies illegally.
What I was going to say. Anyways, Ben.
Yeah, sure. Distributist. I'd appreciate a topic suggestion. I haven't had a live stream in a long time because I've had a real hard time coming up with a topic. I've wanted to talk about like Latter-day Saint stuff for a while, but I couldn't seem to get people together to specifically to talk about that. So I think, we'll just go with whatever the crowd wants to hear about.
Mormons need to make a comeback on YouTube.
Apparently some missionaries are going to be coming over. Maybe I should invite them to the live stream.
When they can find me the golden plates, I'll be
talk about Christmas. Well, actually, Fritz, I actually know a guy who claims to have seen a new set of plates. I don't know whether he actually did or not, but I knew the guy before he started claiming this and was surprised to hear him start claiming this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little weird. I'm not going to say that what he's saying is absolutely false. All I'm saying is I'm a little suspicious.
Yeah.
The fortune cookie thing, well, that was just, I was in a Chinese restaurant and it just struck me that I had a good several minutes of rant that I could do real quick for my YouTube channel, and it seemed to make sense. Ian McDonald, questions about Brigham Young's racism, which should probably be directed to an actual follower of Brigham Young. Because my group did not follow Brigham Young. It followed Joseph Smith III. So not our problem.
Not your circus, not your monkeys.
Right.
I actually brought this up on 4chan just to as a joke, Mormons are the true alt-right, and then they all started throwing a fit. I'm not joking. I was hearing a bunch of people talking about race realism and white birth rates, and I just put Mormons are the future of the white race. And I mentioned the birth rates and all that, the against abortions and all that, and they just start flipping out. What was really funny?
Oh, absolutely. Statistically,
none of them ever actually tried to refute what I was saying. They were just mad. It's like they knew I was right, but they were mad that I was right.
Statistically, it's the super religious white people who are the future of the white race. If you believe in the white race as an ideal.
Let's say there was never any mass immigration to Europe. If it was still as atheist as it is right now, I think you'd probably see over the next 20 years the demographics would start reversing itself, since the only people in Europe that would be having kids would be super conservative Catholics and evangelicals.
Mm-hmm.
Because atheists don't have the babies.
Yeah, I've actually been doing undercover work on a separate name and all that, and I snuck into an anti-theist group, and they are the most autistic spurgs you can imagine.
Sorry, who are?
What? Oh, I just found this anti-theist group, so I decided to make a fake name and all that, and Gmail account and crap, just to infiltrate them, and they are the biggest spurgs you can imagine. It's hilarious.
Communism is a lack of belief.
Yeah.
Apparently, President Trump wants to take us back to the moon.
Yep.
I love that.
With a future look to go to Mars.
He is going to make NASA great again.
He's going to make the moon great again. He's going to go. You can imagine him saying, "We're finally going to get all that cheese, and we get back, and we're going to make Wisconsin the #1 cheese exporter again."
Yeah, I mean, we're going to build the best rockets. They are going to be the best rockets. They're going to be the biggest rockets you have ever seen.
We're going to be making Star Wars in real life. Trump could actually burn on.
Yeah, he's gonna build the wall on the moon to keep the moon people out, and he's gonna make the moon pay for it.
I think Trump.
He's gonna carve the
2020 campaign on the promise of building a real life Millennium Falcon, and he'd probably get all the Democrats to vote for him.
He should get all the Ron Paul people to get to vote for him, because he's going to say in 2020 his promise will be to build a space elevator.
I don't know. Mr. Spark is kind of
a troll. Yes.
Yeah, he's kind of a troll.
Determined that.
He gets on my Discord and starts advocating for Nazism.
What is that? What is?
And then he gets on my live stream chat and starts dissing Joseph Smith randomly. And is he trying to get his ass banned?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
I mean, honestly, It totally is freaking Nazism. National Socialism is Nazism. Get over it.
Yeah. Well, Nazi was like originally a derogatory term for National Socialists, used to by satirists to make fun of them. But they didn't like that, and I guess it. I'm not sure if the Nazis ever actually called themselves Nazis.
I'm all for freedom of speech. I just don't have to host every conceivable kind of speech on my Discord and on my live streams. You can always get your own, and that's totally fine. And if YouTube starts censoring you or whatever, then I'm against that. But that doesn't mean I have to host you on my stuff. Yeah, we kind of need to talk about.
Yeah, actually, I have a topic. So let's go back to the politics and say,
back to
the
politics.
idea of. Although I thought we would actually disagree. I thought you were part of the group that would say that you sort of have that, no matter what, it's your obligation to vote.
No, I don't think that at all. I think that people should study the issues and vote based on studying the issues. And I think that is part of their people's responsibility as a good citizen. However, if you haven't studied the issues, then not voting is better than voting.
What would you say, though, about if somebody studies the issues and then determines after doing that the best course of action would be to not vote?
Well, that's what I did in this last election. I didn't vote, at least for president. I voted for my local Republicans. Now I'm thinking maybe that wasn't such a great idea since they didn't actually defund Planned Parenthood and they didn't repeal Obamacare like they promised to. They promised to do both of those things. They control both houses of Congress. They have no excuse. And so I'm thinking, why vote Republican? And I'm starting to have some real problems here. Republicans promise stuff. We give them a majority in both houses, and we give them the White House, and they still don't do it. I'm about ready to just start voting Democrat on the theory that it will make America's decline happen faster, and thus make get all this out of our system faster.
So wait, are you taking the accelerationist pill then, Ben?
That I mean, I'm feeling like I'm getting close to, because this is the nonsense that I've seen from Republicans in the last 2 years is just inexcusable.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, right? Is this people need to mark out, or conservatives especially need to understand that this is not the same thing. Republicans not keeping up with their promises is not the same thing as Democrats not doing it. Because if you look in the long run, since modern American politics, starting after the war, after World War II, Democrats progressives have gotten their policies. Conservatives haven't. And, frankly, I think it's because so much effort. Part of the reason is because so much effort has been put into winning elections instead of longer lasting things. Like, imagine if half of the money spent on elections, conservatives spent on elections, was spent on instead
getting a movie studio that isn't PureFlix.
Yes, helping funding art schools to help train artists and creators, because the problem is with conservative media is that most the good entertainment made by progressives, the messages are generally implicit, that they're not like explicitly progressive films, whereas almost any the films by PureFlix or by Dinesh D'Souza, right, are explicitly conservative films. That's not how it works. Instead you should say, let's invest in having a movie studio, or funding art schools, and so that artists and filmmakers and cultural producers are educated in a traditionalist conservative education system, and then those values become implicit in their movies that aren't explicitly political.
Right.
And so basically build more schools and culture, not elections. Because the problem with this is that the argument that they keep saying is, well, you should still vote for us anyways because we stopped the Democrats from enacting policy. If I'm thinking, so it's a delaying tactic. Usually you delay something because, you're anticipating something to come in to fix it. Like, you delay the enemy in a battle because reinforcements are coming.
Mm-hmm.
What's supposed to be coming to fix this? Like, the demographics are not changing, and if they don't change, I wouldn't be surprised if Republicans lost every presidential election after 2024.
Yeah.
Well, Republicans have had a hope for a long time that they'd be able to get minorities on their side.
It just hasn't worked.
Tell the truth to minorities.
It's never worked though.
Well, that's because Democrats tell minorities what they want to hear, like how it's not their fault and it's like the big men keeping them down. Whereas like
the Republicans could never offer,
like, you got like your opportunities. You really do have to like put in the work and all that, and like go after like practical stuff and all that. And no one wants to hear that.
No.
Yeah, and try not having sex till you're ready for babies.
There's nothing the Republicans can offer black people that the Democrats couldn't trump.
Oh, I'm not a big fan of him, but you guys heard of Mitt Romney, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I have heard.
I voted for Romney.
Yeah, you know what collapsed his campaign? It was mentioning a fact that it was like the 47% comment where he's like 40% of people will vote for Obama just because they're dependent on the government to survive. And then after that comment came out, his ratings went down because he said facts. Because he said facts.
People don't like to hear the truth.
Well, that's true, but the thing is,
you can't handle the truth.
The problem, though, right, is it may be true, but democratic politics is about what do people want to hear? What's the best lie you can tell your base? And the Democrats say that, well, they're not lying when they say we'll give you welfare, we'll give you Obama money. They're not lying when they say we'll give you affirmative action and with abortions we'll give you consequence-free sex. Well, no consequence for you. Consequence because for a human life, but human life doesn't really have much value according to the Democratic Party.
Wouldn't it be absolutely crazy if accelerationism?
Maybe they can use the dead fetuses as votes. Maybe then.
Okay,
wouldn't it be absolutely crazy if the Democrats were actually able to start using accelerationism as a campaigning tactic to get votes?
I wouldn't be surprised if they start saying like, "Keep voting for us, and we'll get the white minority here sooner." I seriously, you already have people like Joe Biden, who was the vice president for 8 years, and Michael Moore saying, the other Moore loser, saying, I'm happy that a white minority is going to come. Now they say it's because they actually say it for the reverse, because in their mind it's because it's so when that happens, the evil racist Republicans will stop winning any elections. Right. As opposed to if the accelerationist view would be, we want to keep them from winning elections so we can get the white minority here faster. But I'm thinking that the sort of plan I have of, how, Ben, you mentioned rock the vote. I said this last year in my video about this. I think I want to start the campaign Rock Against the Vote. Where
rock against the vote, where we just encourage people to not vote. And maybe having like really small text unless you've studied the issues or something like that. But the big text would just say plain old, don't vote.
Or vote if you think that the candidate can actually do something, which most politicians on the Republican side don't. Well,
you've got if you want to get through to the dum-dums, you have to use monosyllabic words, and don't vote is just real simple.
Stay at home and smoke weed. Well, I think that the bigger thing if the idea of it is you could actually effectively start a social nonviolent revolution with it by saying, giving whatever reason we do not, because let's say because of corporate influence and lobbyists, we don't think politicians represent us. Therefore, we do not recognize them. We will not recognize the legitimacy of the outcome of the election. And you publicly, you make video recordings of you getting giant bonfires and burning your ballots. Well, now imagine, if you think that the election of Trump made people like Mitch McConnell and John McCain soil themselves, can you imagine what that would do? But if you had millions of conservatives just burning their ballots and saying, we don't care, we don't think you're legitimately elected, they would go crazy.
I might say, I'm not actually anti-democratic, but I am against the extent to which we have expanded the franchise now. I think we have extended the franchise over and over and over to the point where our election results have been so watered down by so many idiots with no reason to voting that we end up with really, really stupid results, like Trump versus Clinton, where no matter who wins, America loses.
I'd say America's winning pretty good with Trump right now.
I don't. We have. Where does Trump really stand on the most important issue of our time, which is the sexual revolution?
I don't know.
Well, the problem with him is that he is, of course, he is part of the slim demographic that actually benefits from the sexual revolution, right?
Yeah,
Very, very wealthy, powerful men.
Well,
everybody else is.
We think he's wealthy. We're never sure because we haven't seen his tax return.
We have seen his house. I mean, houses.
Well, he has a lot of real estate. I'll give you that, but we don't know what his business actually looks like, other than that it declared bankruptcy a few years back.
Yeah, but him as an individual is probably very wealthy.
Yeah, okay. It's just that was his big appeal, though, was that he's wealthy, which I'm not too I'm not too angry against
at least he's
just for being rich.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it does make more
Congress
sense.
is made of millionaires anyway.
I think it does make more sense for Republicans to go, yeah, we're the party of the rich, and we want everyone to be as successful as we are.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's sort of.
I think that is a good strategy for the Republicans to just totally own being the party of the rich.
Well,
I don't think that's too bad. But where they really stand on social issues is where I start getting really concerned about the Republican Party. I mean, they'll say that they're going to defund Planned Parenthood in the campaign, and then they pass a budget that still funds Planned Parenthood.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that they're still going to be opposed? They're still going to say we support traditional marriage in a couple of years? I don't think so.
Oh, there's no way they can. There's no way. In maybe in a few states like Alabama, but I don't see the Republican National Committee continuing to make that an issue. Now, it may be that the whole issue is going to settle down because the Supreme Court's going to rule our way on the Jack Phillips case, and then Trump's going to stack the bench with some at least moderate justices, even if he can't get some real firebrands in there who are actually going to do something about Roe v. Wade and Obergefell and other activist decisions. At least some moderates in there who won't support any new crazy decisions.
Ben, what was the case you were just mentioning?
The Jack Phillips case. It was argued just this week. The decision should come out sometime in June.
Can you give us the rundown of it?
Right. Well, this is the famous gay activist suing the wedding cake case. It made it all the way to the Supreme Court,
Oh. Well, that's good. Well, it could be very bad.
Am I like the only one paying attention to this? Because it's like the only thing that in politics that actually matters right now. It mattered more than Roy Moore.
This idea, though, I have an idea if we're going to deter them. The idea, if they win the whole gay cake thing, the idea is to go to any Jewish, Muslim, and gay bakery and all order Nazi cakes and all that. And
that's brilliant.
That is exactly what Jack Phillips' lawyers pointed out to the justices. They said, "Look, if you guys don't do what actually makes sense on this, then we're going to be seeing a whole lot of cases to do with Jews and Muslims. Okay. And so however you rule on this, whatever rule you've made for Christians, we're going to make damn sure that that same rule applies to Muslims. And I don't think that the left really wants that.
This is the problem, though, right? Ben, you're missing the point. Standards don't apply to Muslims. The thing is, do you think that, you know, if the case goes against the Christians and says you actually have to bake the cake, I'm almost certain the precedent's going to be set up that not that anybody has to bake a cake for everybody, but that Christians have to bake gay wedding cakes. If you're a gay bakery or a Jewish bakery, you are not going to, you're going to be screwed. Because
you have to remember that religious affiliation is already defined as a protected class. It's a lot lower on...
Distributors said in the chat they already tried getting Muslims to bake the cakes. The prosecutors wouldn't touch it.
Oh, well, they just have to find some state that has some prosecutor who will.
Mm-hmm.
And there's gonna be some prosecutor somewhere who will. They'll get somebody.
I mean, the thing that but you have to admit, we are effectively living under, well, Europe at least certainly is in many countries, is living under a dual legislative, or no,
a double standard
of law, because you have, like, you know, on Sargon's This Week in Stupid on Sunday, he pointed out, like, there was a guy in Britain who was jailed for 18 weeks for sending mean tweets, literally. Now, we all know that will never happen to Muslims.
18 weeks? I thought it was 18 days.
Oh, sorry, 18 days. But imagine what would happen.
I was going to say.
No, it's not that bad yet. But imagine, here's the thing. We all know that hate speech laws do not actually apply to Muslims. That apparently most laws in Europe, most laws in Europe do not actually apply to Muslims, because you have, and it's actually been legitimized in courts, because you have courts in everywhere from Finland to Germany to England to France that, you know, Muslim rapes somebody is acquitted because he didn't know any better, says judge. And it's like, that's the precedent that says Muslims operate under a different standard of laws than non-Muslims do, which is certainly what the Muslims want. Well, no, they want a standard of law. It's just called Sharia.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that particularly concerns me, especially as I think this is going to come here.
That's what the progressives are trying to do.
I was saying... Barclay Bauer,
like they have everyone else, like the blacks, gays, all that. They think they can manipulate them in the same way. The problem is
they don't think, they know they can do it.
I was going to say, Barclay Bauer in the chat says, if a gay baker refused to bake a cake for a Muslim, which side would the liberal take?
I'd say Muslim, because you remember what happened after the Florida nightclub shooting?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to guess that, just because, you know, we have a bit more.
I don't know. I think it's like Schrodinger's progressive stack. I'm not sure the waveform has collapsed on that one yet.
We all know Muslims are always they're at the top because they can blow you up.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure Muslims are quite degenerate enough for the left to actually make them be the top in the long run. Anyway,
I have to tell Endeavor, thanks for donating to Patreon.
That Keaton kid, I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, the Keaton kid. So there was a thing that happened a few days ago of, like, this young, like, 8-year-old kid from the South made a video about how he was, like, viciously bullied, and so, you know, tons of celebrities made all these outreach towards him, and they had, like, a big GoFundMe campaign. And then, like, what happened is apparently, like, a day or two afterwards, they discovered some photos his mom took with her in a Confederate flag, and, like, her thinking Colin Kaepernick is not a hero. and some people are now, and you have to like, and Black Twitter, being the forgiving, merciful place it is, says that kid fucking deserved to be bullied. I hope he killed himself. Well, and I think that at the very least, at least the celebrities, most of them, like they've said, like, oh, shame on his mom for being a bully herself, but we're still standing with Keaton.
Wow.
They can't resist a crying child. They really can't.
Well, unless it's a newborn, then they just say screw them.
No. If they're newborn, they like it, but if they're still a fetus, then they can.
Well, I think haven't a lot of like the radical feminists, well, radical even for most feminists now, aren't some of them arguing that actually you can still abort a child after it's been born?
They do, and
Yeah.
it's a stance that is logically required if you're going to defend abortion at all stages.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. There's no logical case you can make to defend abortion at all stages and not also defend infanticide.
The ancient world is coming back, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It absolutely is. In fact, I'll hear like atheists trying to blame quote religion unquote for atrocities in the past, like human sacrifice and so forth. And I'll be like, but look what atheists are doing today. I mean, we have child sacrifice just like the ancient pagans.
You're sacrificing it for the convenience of the parents.
We just do it in abortion clinics.
Mental gymnastics to justify
with people in white coats. I mean, but it's the same stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, this is really depressing.
Oh yeah. Admittedly, an atheist society wouldn't last long, so I've never been worried. I mean, look at the YouTube sphere. Even people like, didn't Naked Ape turn away from atheism and went to deism?
Yeah. And I haven't.
Like
I need to watch more of this, but apparently, no. This is hilarious though. Is that apparently like in his debate he had with, who the heck is voice chat?
There once was a man from Peru who dreamed he was eating his shoe.
You're gonna want to meet.
He woke with a fright in the middle of the night to find that his dream had come true.
Okay.
He left. I knew this was going to be a troll. But apparently, Naked Ape debating Kraut and Tia of race realism, apparently the highlight of it was Kraut going, no, you haven't looked at the biological statistics. And then Naked Ape screaming, we haven't done the statistical research on the size of nigger dick.
Oh, I saw that. That was great. This is what we really should be debating and discussing.
I was going to say, back up here, somebody said, oh, man, no, I forgot. It was so important.
Someone just said Naked Ape became Catholic.
I don't know if that's true. He's an open homosexual.
I remember the Jack Phillips case. I want you to explain something to you guys that I think is real important to understand about the Jack Phillips case. So much of the talk about this case in the press and even by lawyers in other similar cases suggests that this type of case revolves around the protection of freedom of religion in the First Amendment. And I think that that's actually a mistake, both legally and politically, to make that your main point. Now, making that a sort of side note or a sort of secondary argument might be okay. But the primary argument on the Jack Phillips case and the gay wedding cake thing needs to be about the freedom of artistic expression and artistic integrity. That needs to be the main argument.
Elaborate, please.
Well, most people will agree that it's reasonable to say that restaurants and grocery stores and other normal businesses that all humans have to use can't just start putting up no colored signs outside, right?
Mm-hmm. That's even if you're a radical libertarian who thinks that
the Civil Rights Act was just completely wrong, you still don't actually like businesses to do that, unless you're just a completely nutty alt-right ethno-state person. But most people aren't that. That's not a mainstream view. That's not even within the Overton window. Okay. So and what the left is doing is trying to argue that this case with the wedding cake is exactly like that, exactly like what the civil rights movement was about. Mm-hmm. And that's going to appeal to a lot of mainstream people. But one thing that the civil rights movement never did was try to compel artists to
make art,
make creative work in support of the civil rights movement when the artists didn't believe in the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement, I have not heard of the civil rights movement ever doing that. This is a completely new territory, even if you accept this comparison between race and sodomy that the left is making. Even if you accept that sodomy is just another kind of race, the civil rights movement never tried to compel creativity. And so what we might say is that even though ordinary businesses that regular people need to use, things like housing, utilities, transportation, groceries, just regular normal food service, things like that, it might be reasonable to say that those shouldn't be able to discriminate against people just because they are affiliated with something that those businesses don't like. Okay. It might be reasonable to say, well, those kinds of businesses have to serve the public. But when you get into artists and creative endeavors, that's something completely different. You can't have a vibrant marketplace for commercial art and require artists to take all commissions that come along.
That's actually a good point and a good way to think about it, because imagine, people always rally against the reverse of saying, when people say you are not allowed to make this type of art. Now, this is basically just the reverse of that, of you are compelled now you have to make this type of art.
Right. And that is just deeply crazy. And I don't know what the left is thinking. Are they really thinking they're going to win on this?
Well, they don't care.
They have gotten a lot of crazy decisions out of the Supreme Court over the years. So I think this is really their moonshot in a lot of ways. If they can win this one, then this is just crazy.
If they win this one, then I'm ordering some Nazi cakes.
I mean, this one is just it's just not only are you not allowed to disagree with them, but now you are required to agree with them and required to make art promoting their ideas, or else you lose your business.
Isn't this similar to what's happened with Jordan Peterson? Of being, it's not a matter of you cannot use certain words. Now you're compelled to use certain words.
Right. This is compelled speech, and
what's compelled action?
Yeah, and I mean, it's. Yeah, I guess I've made my point about it already, though. But this case, I just don't think that the importance of this case can really be understated. I'm not sure what the America is even going to be like if we lose this case.
Look north to Canada.
Yeah, it'll turn into a place that'll soon collapse and get controlled by someone else, either China or Muslim.
The thing about Canada, Canada doesn't have as hardcore of a conservative population as America has.
It also does not have enshrined free speech.
That as well. I don't know if Americans are going to stand for this.
I don't know. They probably.
Well, the thing is, you look at statistics. What is it, like 40% of college students do not believe that hate speech is free speech?
Well, those are college students.
Yeah, but the problem is that, like, I don't think college students 50 years ago would have believed the same thing.
No, they probably. Well, oh wait, that was the '60s. Maybe.
Well,
But the thing is that, like, the Constitution would only have value if people actually believed in it still, which I'm starting to question.
Well, what I mean is, there's still. I mean, the Bible Belt is still a thing in certain parts of the United States. There's still a very large population.
I need to.
There's still a large population, maybe not a majority, but still a very large population who aren't going to stand for this.
The thing is, does it matter? I mean,
the people that won't stand for it, the people that don't stand for it, they have the guns. They have the guns.
That's another thing. I mean,
I need to head out. Sorry.
Okay.
This looks like we could have some kind of insurrection happen. I mean, this seems. I mean, maybe not over this specific case, but the attitude behind this case seems to be baiting a civil war.
This is the issue, right? This is the thing I'm curious as to what conservatives think is there, and if so, at what is the line in which you are prepared to violate law? What is the line? Like, let's say, like somebody like Ben Shapiro, at what point are you going to say, I'm not going to comply with this, I'm getting my gun? I'm curious as to what that line is. Now, we have already let it fall way further because, hey, we allow babies to be killed. If we're fine with babies being killed by the millions, what makes us think that you're going to find that saying someone has to bake a cake, that's going to be the line?
Well, they haven't tried. One thing that they haven't tried yet is forcing Christian doctors to actually perform abortions, and they also haven't managed to force to make it the law to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions.
No, I don't.
If they did, that would be the end of the Catholic hospitals, or at least the end of them having maternity wards.
I don't want to. No, somebody says, Ben, you have an adult dating site in the chat.
It
was bot the chat.
I will block that. Yeah.
Their name is the Distributus.
They're blocked.
No, so yeah, Distributus says, "Oh, they'll get there. They're already going there." I mean, this is the thing, right? This is the indifference that I get very mad at. And just hear me out, is that I would have no doubt. I would bet money that if/when this stuff starts happening, where they say let's say Catholic hospitals have to perform an abortion, I think conservatives are going to do what they have for the past 70 years. They're going to bitch and complain and not do a damn thing.
Well, one thing that's going to happen is there's going to be if the public medicine, the public medical profession, the publicly endorsed medical profession becomes that deeply corrupted, then I think similar to the reaction of Christians against corrupt public schooling is homeschooling. I think we're going to see a return of the doctors who make house calls.
I think
and
you're
are,
going to get
and are unlicensed or are licensed by some organizations controlled by Christians.
The thing is they should have been doing that a lot sooner if this is the direction it's going to go, because at that point, at that level of societal control, the Democrats or the left would just easily be able to say, no, that's illegal, you can't do that. Just like they want to ban homeschooling. And I'm thinking that the problem is not that they're doing this, it's the fact that there's another bot. The problem is that, right, they are is that people that ought to stand up for it don't. That they, what should happen is if this case goes the other way, people should scream and say, we don't recognize the legitimacy of this outcome because we know it's a direct violation. We're not going to abide by it. At that point, people should just start. If in the case of, say, let's say in 20 years they outlaw homeschooling, I think people shouldn't, instead of complaining, conservatives should say, well, we're just not going to abide by the law.
And that's one of the things Roy Moore did, and that's why he had to go.
What?
Roy Moore said he wasn't going to comply with Obergefell. That's the reason he had to go this time. The reason the left made it a national campaign to stop Roy Moore instead of just a thing in Alabama is because he wouldn't obey their, quote, law, unquote. Thing about bombing abortion clinics. Well,
first off, it's immoral because you're killing people.
Actually, most of the instances of abortion clinic bombings that have occurred, as far as I know, have occurred at night when it was expected that no one would be there, with the goal of getting the clinic to shut down temporarily. And that's generally been what abortion clinic bombings have been. It's still very dangerous because you could still accidentally kill people, and of course, it's very risky because you're openly, flouting the law.
Well, actually, that's not the issue. The issue is more that even abortionists, like it's killing. Oh, I mean, that's the thing is I don't really know I don't care about what the law says in this instance. I care is killing an abortionist morally right? Because if by doing this you're saving a lot of people. Now, I understand the reason why you shouldn't do this is maybe because of the moral case, and because it sets any progress the pro-life movement makes, that sets it back a lot.
Yeah. Well, about that, I might say under ordinary circumstances, we should be trying to work through local laws as much as we can. And many times that means trying to even dirty tricks that are within the law, like building code regulations and nonsense like that. If you can selectively enforce laws in an especially strict way in order to get an abortion clinic to shut down, then good for you. Try to elect officials who will do that. Saying, well, we're not banning abortion. We're just making it economically impossible to operate an abortion clinic. Try all kinds of backdoor ways until we can actually get a constitutional amendment passed, which is what we actually need to stop abortion legally in the United States. But I might say this: when you have gone through the whole political process, you have gotten people elected to the legislature. They have passed laws saying that, for instance, late-term abortion is banned in the state past a certain date, like 20 weeks or 10 weeks or whatever it is. And you have people who are still openly offering late-term abortions and doing late-term abortions in defiance of the law, and local officials won't prosecute because politics. At that point, I find it a lot harder to condemn vigilantism. This was the case in the assassination of George Tiller. He was doing late-term abortions in circumstances in which late-term abortions were illegal, and the government wouldn't prosecute. And it was at that point that Scott Roeder took it upon himself to assassinate George Tiller. Now, I don't think that Roeder was right, but I find it very hard to give a secular reason why he was wrong.
Mm-hmm. So this is what I'm thinking, though, is that the problem is that even if we somehow manage to get a constitutional amendment, which we almost certainly won't, because, again, the time is almost out for Republicans on the national scale. They have, again, my estimate is that they can still win 20. I think Trump has a good shot of winning 2020. A Republican could hypothetically, given the demographics, win 2024. But after that, I think it becomes almost virtually impossible. And I don't think that Republicans are going to be able to outlaw abortion in that time, because, I mean, if you did stack the bench perfectly, maybe. But even if all the chips fell right and that happened, the reason the legalization of abortion was in response to the massive increase in unplanned pregnancies following the sexual revolution. So you would now have the same problem happen again, where abortion is illegal, but huge numbers of women are going to get them anyways because we're still living in a sexual revolution culture. That needs to change before we look at the legality of it. Especially it needs to change because that's actually going to fix. That's by focusing more on convincing people why the sexual revolution is wrong and why pro-life, convincing people one by one. That's probably going to help save more unborn children than pushing for it purely legislatively.
Sure, but I mean, we've been trying that for ages, though. I mean, we've been doing that all along. One thing I might say about it, though, is that the two-party system is the inevitable result of
a first-past-the-post electoral system.
Of a first-past-the-post electoral system. And I don't see a first-past-the-post electoral system ending in 2024. So I think the Republicans are still going to be winning after 2024, and we're going to probably have my prediction is that we're going to continue the 8-year pattern we've had since the early 90s, where we have a Democrat president for 8 years and then a Republican president for 8 years and then a Democrat president for 8 years. I expect that pattern to continue, and only a major event could disrupt that.
I disagree, because, again, you look at the demographics. Black people and non-whites are never going to vote Republican in any significant numbers. That population is increasing, and now if the Republicans,
I don't know if they're never going to vote Republican. I think they're never going to vote conservative. Conservatism might be on the way out, but I don't think the Republican Party is.
Well, I mean, at that point, if the Republicans just can basically jettison being anti-immigrant, well, that kills the Republican Party either way, because if they don't change,
I've said they need to kill their anti-immigrant stance for a long time. We are not facing the same kind of problem as they are in Europe here in America. We're being flooded with Mexican immigrants, but
we're going to be flooded with Muslims eventually. It's going to happen.
But Mexican immigrants aren't really. I mean, they're an economic problem, but they aren't really
a social problem.
They aren't as much of a social problem as the Muslim invasion of Europe.
The problem, though, is, again, Muslim immigration has also substantially increased, and it's going to continue to increase. But nowhere near the numbers that there are over in Europe. We're not going to be looking at a Muslim majority in America anytime soon. Yeah, but we're still going to be looking at a significant enough portion that's going to cause the same amount of issues. And the thing is that if the Republican Party dropped anti-immigration, they would die, because all the conservative white people would stop voting for them. And if they kept that up, they would also die. I think the Republican Party.
I think they need to moderate and nuance their stance on the immigration issue.
The problem, though, is that this is essentially what the Republicans have done for the past 70 years of trail the Democrats, right? Of basically have a lot of the same policies as the Democrats did, but just the policies they held 30 years ago.
Well, I mean, you say that the Mexican immigrants cause social problems. I don't know. It seems like, I mean, it seems like if you already said that we don't have a majority of we don't have a moral majority in the country as it is. So how can bringing Mexicans in make things any worse?
Well, no, I think it would continue to make things worse. But I mean, this is the problem. I don't see any way that the Republican Party can survive, even if they jettisoned all of the platforms, even if they moderated. They're still not going to be as the key is that they're not going to be as. They're still not going to have the same positions at the same level as the Democrats, and so the non-whites will still always vote for the Democrats because they're even better.
I don't know. I mean,
unless the Republicans said we're going to now be as progressive, we're going to try and be more progressive than the Democrats.
I don't think they're ever going to be more progressive more progressivist than the Democrats, but I think that they do have a reasonable shot of continuing to win with moderate candidates. And one thing you have to remember is that so much of politics is based on negative campaigning. And the Democrats have a lot of shady business that they're in.
Well,
and
again, the problem is that,
and no matter how shady the Republicans are, that always gives them stuff that they can that always gives them dirt that they can dig up, and they don't necessarily have to get people to agree with them on the issues all the time. They just have to get people to hate the Democrats. And I think that they can do that. One of the reasons they can do that is because the Democrats are being so heavily influenced by this absolutely insane version of feminism. And distributist, I'm prognosticating the future. I'm not saying what I support or what I don't support. I'm saying I expect the Republican Party to continue to be viable. I'm not saying I support the Republican Party. I'm telling you what I expect will probably happen. And what will probably happen is that the Republican Party will continue to be a major party in the United States. It probably will start dropping a lot of its conservative positions. And I don't know if I'll be able to continue voting for it. But it's likely to continue to be a major political force. There is a lot of very old and very dirty money behind it. And that's not going to change.
Can I say something?
Sorry, I ended up arguing with distributist in the chat.
But yeah, no, I think you're right. I think, it is fair enough that, it sounded like you were supporting these policies, but
no. I'm saying what I think probably will happen.
Yeah, though I think I on the local level, maybe. But I think maybe a very moderate Republican could win in, say, 2040, but I think that they're going to still have you have to admit, they're going to have a significant legislative loss in the coming decades.
My prediction is that the Republicans will probably win in 2020. The Democrats will probably win in 2024 and 2028. Republicans will probably win again in 2032. That's my prediction.
Well, that remains to be seen. I mean, that's something that people should be thinking of, is what happens when the Democrats come back into power, because I think they're going to be in the mood for revenge. They're going to be very, very mad that that white people elected Trump as president.
That's the thing. They need to the Republicans, if they want to win in 2020, they need to be capitalizing on a lot of that rage to paint the Democrats as extremists.
As crazy.
Yeah. If they can paint the Democrats as extremist, crazy people, then they have a good shot at winning. All they have to do is
tell the truth.
Find a way to tie the Democrat candidate. Find a way to tie the Democrat candidate to the crazy political violence that's been going on.
Now, the thing that I always have an issue with is, even though I'm becoming Catholic, it is a problem with Catholics as well. But Distributus has a great point, is why should anyone care? I think we're talking about thinking hypothetically, but that is a good point, is that I think at that point, I am certainly not. I'm probably not going to vote for the Republicans. I don't think that there's a good reason to.
Well, you know, I think it depends on who's running and what their stances are and all that in a particular race, and those things kind of go back and forth. When John McCain ran for president, I was like, I'm not voting for John McCain. But then he appointed Sarah Palin to be his running mate, who was at the time super conservative. And I was like, well, okay, I think what he's saying by appointing Sarah Palin is he's really going to try and push for the Republican ideas, even if he has more of a middle of the road kind of history. He's going to try to actually lead the Republican Party. So, okay, I guess I'll vote for him because he seems to be better than the other guy. But
he clearly didn't beat him. I mean,
yeah,
I don't understand.
He didn't win on that. But the thing is, things like that, which are just totally unexpected, which happened because nobody expected Sarah Palin to be John McCain's running mate. Nobody expected that. And when unexpected things like that happen, I don't want to just commit myself in advance. But I might say I am rather suspicious of the Republican Party right now.
Isn't it ironic that you're probably, even though you were never Trump, probably less suspicious of Trump than you are of the establishment Republicans? And I would agree with you if that's the case, because, I actually don't doubt that Trump does want to enact a lot of these policies, and I don't doubt that probably a lot of conservatives like Ted Cruz, and a large number of them do want to do things like repeal Obamacare and defund Planned Parenthood. The problem is that you have enough horribly corrupt rhinos, Republicans in name only, like John McCain and Mitch McConnell and Susan Collins and their ilk, that will refuse to allow any actual policies to be made because they're corrupt, horrible assholes.
No, someone in the chat said, Sarah Palin is the worst thing Christians could ask for. She makes us all look like idiots. I'd like to respond to that. I don't think that Sarah Palin's dumb. I think that's a narrative that was created by the media, the left-wing media who wanted to defeat John McCain. And I think that I don't think she's especially intelligent, but she was governor of Alaska, and that's not a small state, and that is a big job. And she managed to actually get the oil revenues going back to the people in Alaska. I mean, that's a big deal. And, the media made a big deal out of her doing things like writing notes, writing, major points she has to hit in her speech, writing those down on her hand. That seems like a totally, not a big deal thing to do to me. I mean, she makes gaffes. The thing is, everyone in Washington makes gaffes. Everyone. There's no one in politics who doesn't make gaffes. It's just that we hear about the gaffes from certain people and not about the gaffes from other people because of who the Republican or not who the mainstream media wants us to hear the gaffes from. So Joe Biden, all through the Obama administration, that guy was a gaffe machine, and we never heard about it.
Ben, Distributus has a good point. He says, why should we care about a Republican Party's success given that we acknowledge it can't support traditionalism?
I don't know if you were listening the whole time, Distributus, but that's a question I brought up already a good hour ago, I think. No,
that's the point, right? We agree that the Republican Party, it seems, is not able to act, they have more power now than they have in 90 years.
Hold on
they can't do anything.
Here. 1 second here. Timothy Smith asks, what on earth is a gaffe? A gaffe is a stupid comment. says when they're on mic that wasn't very well considered, and it comes out as them saying the wrong thing, saying something they didn't mean, saying something that sounds stupid, saying something that if they had a good 10 minutes to think about it, they never would have said. Somebody's on the spot and they give an answer to a hard question to a reporter that's just a really stupid answer that makes them sound like they're literally Hitler or something. That's a gaffe. And
President Trump. Oh,
yeah, President Trump's strategy is to just make so many gaffes that they all just kind of fade together.
He changes the language.
Yeah, well, anyway.
So Distributus also said, so what's the answer of why should we care about the Republican Party?
Right. Well, I think that of the two parties who actually, okay, first of all, I might say that if we want to affect politics at all, which I'm assuming that we do, since we can vote, it is a thing that we can do in America, we can affect politics somewhat, then we get two choices because we have a first past the post voting system. And that mathematically determines that there will be two and only two actual choices. And so of the two choices, which one is more likely to promote moral traditionalism?
Some more trads are in the chat. Or can I send it to the Discord?
Oh, sure. Who's on here? Well, anyway, I might say that's been my reason for being a Republican for many years, is that of the two parties, who are the only two choices that we have, the Republicans are relatively more likely to promote moral traditionalism than the Democrats. But I don't know. Maybe both of them are getting close to zero now. I don't know. I mean, I do think that the Republican National Committee deciding to back Roy Moore indicates that they do still think that moral traditionalism can get them some votes in at least some states. So maybe there's bits of that old bargain still left. I maybe.
I mean, that's the interesting question, right? Is if we could agree as traditionalists that the Republican Party cannot govern or advance traditionalism effectively, what do we do? If we cannot accomplish this by voting, what do we accomplish? How else do we seek?
Well, I've never thought that voting's the primary way of promoting moral traditionalism. It's just interesting to talk about because it's a thing going on.
Sure.
We need to get more people going to church before we can get traditionalism into politics. Well, as long as it's a real church, the SJW fake churches are kind of worse than nothing.
Well, I mean, my perspective on the whole thing is we shouldn't really care about the kind of local, the current temporal politics. So like over the next 10, 15 years, we shouldn't really care. We should be focusing more on reclaiming the philosophy in universities and reclaiming the culture.
Well,
anyone disagree with that?
Well, that's true to some extent. Although I think that I don't think that we can just be completely apolitical. One reason is because we need to make sure that we have some legal guarantees that we continue to have freedom of speech and freedom of religion and so forth in America. Even if we can't get the Republicans to actually promote virtuous living, we can at least get the libertarians to guarantee that we'll still be safe from actual government persecution.
Well, yeah, I mean, but you've already got your constitution. We don't have that over here. Obviously, support those that support the constitution nominally. But what you should be doing is what the Marxists did in the 1940s and 50s and infiltrate the academia. That's what will change the minds of the youth, and that will change. You don't even need to do any of this politicking at a very micromanaging sort of level with, say, senators in various states. You'll just allow the culture itself will shift towards what you want in the first place. So,
and also
that's part of why I wanted to get into philosophy in university. Because of that, and I decided to go with philosophy over political science because of that. But I don't think that means we can just completely ignore politics either.
I'm not saying that.
I mean,
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying all we have to do is maintain the parts of the Constitution and the government that allows us to, allows us to express our ideas openly. And if we can do such in a convincing sense that it convinces those at the top, it'll obviously rain down. Like, when you pour the wine into the top glass on a pyramid of wine glasses, you fill that first cup. That'll be the say.
So this is
I don't drink, so I've never done that.
This is trickle down. Hold on, this is trickle down culture, then, isn't it?
Well, yeah,
that's your idea. I actually think universities are important. Sure, I actually think that popular culture is more influential than university, though.
I'm sorry.
I said I actually think that popular culture is more influential than university, though.
I would say they just filter into each other. I mean,
that's pop culture is created because people go to university.
Yeah, I mean, in the 1960s, we had students protesting against universities when the universities were still had, maybe the professors weren't exactly traditionalist, but the professors generally weren't all Marxists either in the 60s.
But you know why that is, Ben? That's because of the knock-on effect from people like Simone de Beauvoir, from Jean-Paul Sartre, and from the liberal philosophers that came before them. We have to wait a couple of generations for things to acclimatize. We just have to attack those right positions and let it filter through.
Well, what I was saying was that popular culture in the 1960s managed to fuel a popular protest by students against universities.
I don't think it
and
was.
I think that showed that there's actually more power in popular culture than there is in universities. I could be wrong, but that's what I think.
I have returned.
I think you're getting it backwards, because don't forget, many of these pop bands, for instance, the Beatles and such, they were educated during the 50s, and by then the Marxists already dominated Western academia, and they were just carrying out the presuppositions of the Marxists or materialists or whatever we want to call them.
Right.
So why not just do the same thing? We can influence popular culture towards that through influencing the professors, which therefore influences the pop icons. You see?
Yeah, these people go to universities. The people that create, like people like Joss Whedon, George Lucas, anybody that Juju Abrams, they all go to film school. And again, imagine if instead of putting all their, I'm not saying that, if you think that voting will have an impact, that you shouldn't do it, because, if you have a reason, if there is a reason why you should delay or prevent the progressives from completely taking over, I can understand that. But you need to have a thing of which you need to have a goal of why you're delaying them. Now,
Steve Harrison in the chat says, maybe we should focus on accumulating wealth in order to influence the culture.
Okay, can I continue what I was saying, though?
Well, okay, I just think we need to get to that question eventually, because I think that's really important.
Okay, but let's not. Yes, okay, but let's not detract. But what I was saying is that, well, what I had already said is that imagine if during the 1980s, if there hadn't been so much of a focus on getting Reagan into office, but instead building up conservative art schools so that you have filmmakers being filtered through that are going to start creating art and films from a conservative lens, instead of all of the actual popular films that people watch coming through a liberal progressive lens through Hollywood and all their schools, and conservative films, quote unquote, being the pieces of crap that Dinesh D'Souza makes.
And when we get films that are adapting conservative stuff, since they're still being done by left-wing Hollywood,
I know
they end up getting botched.
I wouldn't even say that. I'd say that the conservatives in your country, particularly in mine as well, just accept an entirely different set of presuppositions than we do. We need to be thinking as if we don't exist at all. I think.
I mean, we have no presence in culture or in academia, for that matter. I mean, we're an exceptional minority. Let's face it. I mean,
don't know about no presence, but
we've got Roger Scruton, and that's about it.
Really, but it's small, and it's and a lot of the stuff that gets put out is very low quality.
Yeah, that needs to change. If anything is going to change eventually, because Fritz,
do your fucking PhD already. Jesus Christ.
I'm not going to get my PhD. I don't want to be a high school teacher.
With a PhD.
Well, the question was maybe we should focus on accumulating wealth in order to influence the culture. And I might say that's kind of what I'm doing right now, because I'm instead of trying to continue to pursue academia, I decided to get out there and get a real job.
After 2 degrees.
That's what I'm trying to do as well.
Yeah.
But
I finished my 2 I've actually finished my last final for my 2-year degree for accounting, and then I'm looking into going into trades like engineering or plumbing.
I made a big fucking mistake with my degree. I think I'm going to go to an elite school, do philosophy, and then probably go into management after that.
But I think the thing with money, though, right, is there is still a lot of old white rich people that are supposed to be conservative, and they're throwing their money away.
Mm-hmm. They're throwing the Democrats are the real racist kind of people. But the problem is, guys, is that they believe that as well. They don't believe what we believe. We're a minority. Very few people actually believe what we believe.
I mean, the people who are donating money to the Republican Party and to the Libertarian Party are definitely not going to be donating money to us, because we're all a bunch of traditional Christians who don't believe in the same values as them. I mean, we have no real synthesis with people like the Libertarian Party or like the Republican Party.
And anytime I think of
the Republican Party's become a shell of itself at this point. All it is just a bunch of people pretending to be.
It's been a shell since the 1940s, but I mean, the thing is that it's just been an empty shell since the past few years. But the thing is that anytime I think of the Libertarian Party, I think of that Lord Southern video making fun of it, where it's the clip of the guy who's like taking off his clothes in front of the Libertarian Party convention.
Well, there wasn't just him. There was also the whole the people who booed Austin Peterson because he said that heroin shouldn't be marketed to young children.
Mm-hmm.
When was this?
At the Libertarian National Convention last year.
Heroin shouldn't be marketed to young children. Boo. Yeah,
well, maybe we need to have roads.
That party has a real future, doesn't it?
Wow.
Let me see if I can find some of the hilarious.
That's a hot take.
Oh gosh. Oh Lord. Yeah, Ben. Hold on. Let me see if I can. I'm going to post this in the.
I seem to vaguely remember hearing about that before. I guess I didn't really think about it. I guess it's just funnier when I hear it out loud.
Ben,
when I originally heard it, it didn't occur to me as funny when I originally heard it, but this time I.
Really? All right, Ben. Look
at
the
Libertarian Party actually got on C-SPAN with this guy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
There was also that guy. What is it? The guy who created that one antivirus software.
This makes. They got McAfee. They got John McAfee at the Libertarian National Convention.
Ew.
That's weird. John McAfee is a weird dude. Well, I might say, this makes me feel a little bit better, because I've really felt like libertarians are really taking over the Republican Party.
Well,
but if that and the Ayn Rand Atlas Shrugged movies are the kind of cheese fests that they're putting on, then it makes me feel a lot better.
Well, what it is it's not that the Libertarian Party is going to overtake the Republican Party. It's that the Republican Party is just going to be filled up with libertarians.
That's what I said.
Because they can't. Because the Republican.
But the thing is, if that's the kind of cheese fest that libertarians are putting on, then I feel a lot better about where we are, because at least most of the Christian stuff that gets put out isn't that cheesy.
They made a movie out of Atlas Shrugged.
Yes,
they made a trilogy of movies out of Atlas Shrugged. In fact, the casting wasn't all that bad. They had some Star Trek actors in there who were pretty good, including Armin Shimmerman, notably, who played Quark. Yeah, so Clark got to actually be in the Atlas Shrugged movies. That was actually pretty cool.
Talking about something interesting. Sorry. The problem is that the Republican
Shut up,
Party...
Fritz. That was super interesting.
Wait. But how bad?
Hold on, I have to say this. Nobody interrupt. Ahat, shut up. Sorry. Is that the Republican Party? We know they are going to drop any. They are going to start dropping any actually socially conservative. They
already started.
I mean, the thing is, I don't know if they're going.
A guy got up on the stage of the Republican National Convention and said, "I'm proud to be gay and proud to be Republican. What more proof do you need?"
The thing is, do you think that they're going to drop their pro-life stance?
I'm sure it's going to come eventually. I mean, I wouldn't hold it against the.
I don't. They can't afford to right now, but maybe in another decade, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm sure we thought that. I'm sure we thought the same thing about homosexual marriage 10 years ago, and look at where we are now. So.
Yeah. I think the thing about abortion, though, is the silver lining there is if you look at the statistics, the percentage of people that are pro-life versus pro-choice have been fairly stable for the past several decades.
That is true.
So the thing is, it's not. They don't really need to drop that because it's not a losing issue. Because again, it has it ebbs and flows. Like sometimes more people are pro-life, sometimes more pro-choice in this country.
You know the problem is that we're losing the metaphysical and cultural war, right? It's not that we're losing any political wars; it's that we're losing the things that actually influences the politics.
Academia.
Yeah, but here's the problem. The great timeless issues, and the issues of the past century, a lot of them have been done to death. But what's interesting to talk about right now is what's going on in the era of Trump specifically.
Nothing.
And that's why we end up talking about the Republican Party and all that kind of stuff, because that gives us something new to talk about. Since in previous live streams we've already talked about a lot of this general culture war stuff.
But Trump is exactly the same as Obama in his presuppositions, really, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see the point.
I mean,
I understand that. Go ahead.
The thing about
it's not Trump.
Don't interrupt.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
It's not Trump individually. It's what's going on right now.
All right. Here's the issue. Actually, Pius, do you want to talk?
Yeah,
go
we
ahead.
need to. No, I want to hear what you had to say, Pius. Now, I just had to finish my sentence.
I was going to say, essentially, what's going to happen is Obama's become the whole face of the Democrat Party for the next probably score or two, and they're going to try to do the same thing with Donald Trump to try to remodel him into the second coming of Ronald Reagan, and it's probably not going to work out that well. I mean, given his first year in office, he's done almost nothing. So, I mean,
actually, that could work for them pretty well. Reagan campaigned on domestic issues that he did almost nothing about in office, because his presidency was dominated by foreign policy, which he didn't campaign on.
In Reagan,
I don't care about foreign policy, though.
We do.
Well, foreign policy during the Reagan years was super important because we were dealing with...
It was the breakup of the Soviet Union, or the beginning of it.
We were dealing with the beginning of the end of the Soviet Union, and that made foreign policy at that time really important.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I suppose, though, the problem is that the presuppositions, yeah, that's what you're saying. No, Mauritian was saying that. This is the issue of why we're not thinking outside the box. That both... Even if Trump and Obama disagreed strongly on certain areas, both the Democratic and the Republican Party, in their core idea, they still base themselves off of certain presuppositions. They are different ones, but they're both not traditional. The Democrats are off of a progressive Whig view of history. The Republicans, even the most hardcore conservative, quote unquote, Republicans are still liberal. Because, the American project is still a liberal project.
It was a Freemasonic experiment in Enlightenment politics.
Poisoning the water and turning the frogs gay too. Nah, I know that it's true, but like.
Well,
I'm not incorrect.
I believe in the American project. I always have. So I don't disagree with the Republicans there. The trouble is, I think that a lot of them are not really conservatives in the social sense. I think a lot of them are really just care about low taxes and low regulation, and they just give lip service to the Christian conservative base in order to get votes. But
Yeah, I mean that's basically what the Conservative Party in the UK is like.
yeah, and
lip service.
but Republicans care more about winning than anything else.
I mean, honestly, what conservative? What has Theresa May ever done anything conservative? Because
the Republicans?
No. I said Theresa May.
Oh, Theresa May. Oh, you're talking about UK politics. Yeah, I don't get involved in UK politics.
I was asking Mauritian.
Yeah, like as I said, she's acting kind of more leftist, I would say, particularly with Amber Rudd.
I mean, she was big on gay marriage, so.
She did sort of say Christians should be allowed to celebrate without, recourse on Easter. I mean, she did say one nice thing, but
I'd like to point out something to people in the chat and all of you real quick here, and that is how I'd define traditionalism, and I'd really define it in an extremely broad sense. In that I think that anyone who can agree with the basic gist of C.S. Lewis's points in The Abolition of Man, I would count as a traditionalist. And that means if you believe that there is a real right and wrong, and that the moral values of how you should live your life that we get from traditional Western Christian civilization, then you're a traditionalist, no matter how you think the government ought to be run.
But the thing is, then,
so you can be a traditionalist and a socialist, as far as I'm concerned. Or
that's the problem. You'd have a lot of shit-lived socialists, but socialists have completely different assumptions from us. And they won't be traditionalists because they oppose the fundamental metaphysics which build our societies up. They are materialist. Our societies are fundamentally not
you're thinking of communists there.
Socialism,
strictly speaking, is an economic system, and that's all. It doesn't
involve. It's a materialistic economic system, though.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
This is the problem, though, Ben.
Just about all economic systems are going to be about materials, if that's what you mean by materialistic.
No, but
so economic systems by themselves don't entail a metaphysic.
All right, hold on. This is the problem.
Listen, Fritz, let me finish what I'm saying, and then you can talk. The thing is that regarding socialism, is that when these economic policies are put within a country, then they obviously do follow the presuppositions of that nation's culture, and those aren't necessarily material. But socialism is explicitly material. It's specifically about materialism, whereas capitalism isn't necessarily.
What makes you think that?
What makes me think that is because
about capitalism.
Well, capitalism isn't necessarily explicitly materialist, because the countries that have put into place like what you would call capitalism, which is really just a weird amalgamation with tons of different arms and legs and such, a lot of them have been founded on what we would describe as, well, substantialism, or like traditional metaphysics, so like assumptions that immaterial exists, for instance.
Well, this is something that you've observed in history. Then you've observed a correlation between socialist countries being materialist and capitalist countries being dualist.
Name one religious socialist country.
Right. So what I was saying was that there's not a necessary philosophical connection between the two ideas.
So then what is economic policy founded on? Just like, okay, this is how we're going to produce the most. Doesn't that in itself mean that there's some sort of materialist assumption there in the first place? Because why would you necessarily ethically want to produce as much as possible?
I think there's a difference between the economics and the justification someone might bring for the economics?
Well, I mean,
someone could I think that someone could make a case for either socialism or capitalism from either metaphysic. In fact, I could make all four cases real briefly if you'd like.
Then go ahead.
Okay. Well, I think we all know the Christian case for capitalism because Republicans have made it for decades, right? So that one's familiar. Do I have to make that one?
No, I don't think you do. I mean,
okay, so we agree that one it can be made. Now let's talk about the Christian case for socialism. Now, understand, this is not a position that I adopt myself, but it's one I'm going to describe for you just to prove that it's at least theoretically possible that someone can make this argument. And it is basically that God owns all the stuff, and therefore none of us should presume to have as private property that which ultimately belongs to God.
Okay, and my counter argument would be surely when in Genesis God gave us domain over all the animals, then surely that's giving us ownership.
Yes, well, I'm not saying that I agree with that idea, and I'd make that same point. But my point is, though, that there are people who will make that case.
Yeah,
and
but we're not
you can argue against them, but there are people who make that case. I mean, there's lots of wrong positions out there. I think that position is wrong, but it is a position that some people take.
But Ben, we're talking about valid positions here. We're not talking about what people can theoretically believe. People can theoretically believe any belief in any sort of interaction with any other sort of belief. Like, they can believe whatever they want. They can believe that on Tuesday
I was talking about a definition of traditionalism. And I'm explaining why the definition of traditionalism doesn't entail an economic theory.
You just said that there could be socialist ones. I'm saying that, like, you can have any theory you want theoretically, but there should be some sort of limitation there because of the presupposition. Like, anyone can believe anything. But I think that there are some things that are restricted, that you can have any sort of position you want. Let me think about how to say this properly.
Okay, well, anyway, I had to make the other two of the four cases anyway. And let's say the material case for capitalism is Ayn Rand, and the material case for socialism is Karl Marx. Okay. So that gives us all four cases.
Can I finish my sentence? Yeah. But the thing is that we have a certain set of assumptions on our traditionalism. Sure, we can have many different economic beliefs, but there are some things that are excluded. And I would say, based on my counter-argument to your Christian attitude towards socialism, I'd say that would be one of the things that would be excluded.
I don't think so. For one thing, the Pilgrims, in America, initially tried a basically socialist economic model for their colony, and they based that idea on their Christian worldview, not on materialism.
I'm pretty certain that they had.
I think that they were wrong and it didn't work, but all I'm saying is,
and I think they actually did have private property. Sure, they held things in common, but they weren't like they weren't like completely private property averse communists. They had their own industries and enterprises, as far as I'm aware.
No, in the early years of Plymouth Colony, they had an essentially socialist agricultural system.
Ben is actually
in which
right.
Everyone worked a common garden.
But that's fascist, isn't it? Oh, wait.
Yeah, pretty much, and it failed miserably. It doesn't work. The problem with it is it doesn't work in real life. But all I'm saying is not perfect, but good Christian people, though, sometimes hold that opinion. Good Christian people sometimes hold a lot of wrong opinions. And when I'm trying to define traditionalism, I'm trying to define it as broadly as I possibly can, to have us really focusing on who I'd see as the real enemy, which would be the people who want to reduce
relativists,
the idea of right and wrong to mere opinion.
So relativists.
Yeah, people who
Surely-
are who would
Surely
who would
some of
be
those economic assumptions could potentially lead to that, because don't forget, if you've got certain economic assumptions from one philosophy and moral assumptions from another, what's to stop the two interacting in a way that brings the assumptions together in a way that could lead to undesirable consequences?
Sure, but the relevant question here, though, is whether that argument you're making there is an argument within traditionalism that two different traditionalists would have with each other, or an argument for traditionalism against non-traditionalism.
Well, I mean, we're clearly
Now,
discussing allowing
I
socialists
think-
into a traditionalist worldview, but the thing is that when you have these sorts of ideas, you're going to bring along some of the suppositions with it. And obviously, as traditionalists, we believe in a unmodifiable morality that can always exist. Surely, if somebody believes something from a philosophy which patently doesn't believe this, surely they could accidentally bring along that presupposition as well.
Yeah, but we can't base definitions on possible accidents.
They're like cogent philosophies; they grow out of each other. If you've got one assumption from that, you can usually trace the branch down to the root, and that's the problem. We want to completely remove the tree.
I don't think there is a necessary root in materialism for either socialism or capitalism. And my example of the Pilgrims, I think, proves that.
I'm actually siding with Ben here. I think if his point, if I can speak for a moment, is that you can have people existing within a traditionalist framework that don't necessarily that hold varying views on economic policy that does not contradict the traditionalist, premises. I think that's perfectly valid.
I'm beginning to think that Ben is almost advocating for third positionism here. Like,
what does that? What does that? What does that mean? I want to be clear that I personally support capitalism. I just think that in regard to traditionalism, I think that the traditionalist tent, or is what I'd mean by traditionalism. That the tent for traditionalism is extremely broad, and it really is more about moral realism than it is about economic policy.
Honestly,
right?
I think you're defining things extremely broadly in general, because I'm not sure I would agree that socialism properly existed before the 1840s.
Sure, there was like a general sharing of resources, but there wasn't an actual doctrine written out like there was.
I mean, you could make the argument that, say, the people in the Siege of Munster were technically socialists, but I wouldn't. I would say that socialism came about with the young Hegelians.
Mm-hmm. When the actual idea was founded. So
I could agree that Hegelian socialism is clearly against anti-traditionalist. If you said Hegelian socialism, then I would have said, oh, okay, definitely. But socialism in the broad sense that would include the Pilgrims, and it would include a lot of stuff from before the young Hegelians, then I'd say, well, I don't think that's a traditionalist versus non-traditionalist issue.
Well, I think we have different definitions of socialism. Would you consider distributism a form of socialism?
Myself, actually, yeah.
Really?
But that's where we disagree.
But I want to say that I'm not an economist, a political science major. So
I don't think any of us are.
So I'd be open. I haven't studied traditionalism enough to be really confident in that opinion, and so I'd be open to reconsidering it. But I think it's somewhat off topic at the moment to go into that right now.
Okay,
I think it might be worthwhile to have another live stream dedicated specifically to the question: is distributivism socialist?
I think
that would be a good idea.
Can I conclude my point? Because I think the difference here between what me and Ben believe is that Ben believes that socialism of any form is just controlled economy in the extreme, whereas I wouldn't say that, say, Mussolini's Italy is by any means socialist.
Oh, of course not. Neither was Franco's Spain or Adolphus's Austria
or Estado Novo, for instance.
This is the difference, right? I think this is a mistake that
American conservatives make.
Yeah, especially the Dinesh D'Souza types. This is what I want to make my video on, is the fact that their model, maybe it's accurate
based on their definition, but I think their definition is not very useful because it essentially states that, you know, economic and political systems necessarily exist on a binary between authority and control, or socialism versus capitalism. I don't think that's true. I think that, you know, if you look at the fascist states, if you look at that corporatism, or a system in which there is a level of state regulation, but it's you can't plot it on, you cannot accurately, or you cannot in good you could not in good faith plot corporatism or the economic systems present in fascist countries on that spectrum. You couldn't call them socialist because they're not socialist. They involve have a cooperation between the workers, the private business, and the state for the benefit of the nation. That's not socialism.
Yeah, I'd agree. Like, because I'm making a response to Dinesh D'Souza's video on fascism tomorrow, and I find the whole thing kind of silly because not only does he not understand the idea of corporazione, like the idea of the corporeal form of the state, but it's just a whole load of, well, he seems to have a really weird kind of surface level view of what would be considered the left-right dichotomy. Whereas,
could you send me a link to that video, please? Because I'm going to make my own. I'm not going to respond to that video itself. That's your purview. But I am going to make a sort of broader view, criticism of that position. But the thing is, yeah, you look at that. You think about what's the objective or the premise of these different systems of forms of these economic systems. The socialism is, we want wealth spread out. We want wealth distributed, for the benefit of the working class. Fascism is, we want wealth concentrated, or we want wealth to be able to flow. Oh yeah, no. In socialism, the wealth should flow towards the benefit of the workers. For fascism, or under corporatism, it flows for the benefit of the nation.
Well,
okay. I didn't want to get into a long, extended discourse on economic systems.
Well, too bad.
My point was my definition of traditionalism is that traditionalism is ultimately about meta ethics first, and then certain basic principles in ethics second, and that economics doesn't even come into the definition of traditionalism. You can make some really compelling cases for certain economic ideas being excluded by traditionalism, but at least the definition, I don't think, would include any reference to economics.
The issue, though, I have, right, with American conservatives, let's take people like Stephen Crowder or Ben Shapiro, is that, well, they're correct in the fact that if they want that, in order for a society to have a high degree of individual freedom, you need to accept, a metaphysical premise like that our rights come from God. The problem is that they make that the objective morality and metaphysics as a path towards, it's a tool to work towards individual liberties. Individual liberty is still the highest value. And so from that, you get people saying, well, you don't actually need to have metaphysics in order to have individual liberty, because can you have an atheist that still lives within and respects the system? Well, yes. And so people said, you don't need that. And that's in a lot of ways where you got the new atheists from. And I think that's what I think marks, I guess conservatives like Stephen Crowder from traditionalists, is the fact that they still hold, even though they agree with us in the fact that metaphysics is necessary, their priority is different from ours. We believe that that the objective morality from God comes first, and that liberty is a consequence of that, but it's not the most important value.
Sure. I might also say that while I think that traditionalism does lean very strongly in a dualist kind of direction in metaphysics, I wouldn't say that, and I myself am a dualist. I should make that clear.
Are you going to the dualist kingdom then?
What?
Well, nothing. It was nothing.
I think that there's both matter and spirit are both exist. So I'm a dualist in that sense. I think that Brighamite Mormons are technically materialists and traditionalists.
Okay.
I mean, they do uphold that there's a real right and wrong, and certain ideas about how you should live your life that still fall within a basic model of a Christian society, even though you might say that they're not Christians in some of their theological doctrines. They still believe in a real right and wrong. They're not relativists.
So do most Marxists on a certain level.
No,
That's actually the point, right?
Doctrinaire Marxists are historical relativists, and Marx was a historical relativist.
But
and
I
this
think you'll
is
find the majority
fundamentally important to Marx's ideas and to understanding them, is to understand that Marx was a historical relativist.
Ben, you see the problem here. I'm talking about the average ones. Like, they don't know that. But the thing is that this is what I was bringing up with socialism. You aren't, like, one moment you're following the metaphysics to their conclusion, like you said with my comment on Marxism. But on the other hand, when we're talking about socialism, that suddenly doesn't exist. You see the problem here?
Here's the thing. Socialism is just an economic system, but Marxism is an overarching worldview that includes a lot of different topics and a lot of metaphysics.
And I would disagree. I think that socialism is intrinsically linked to Marxism, as I've already made clear.
I mean, socialism is defined by Marx as a transitional process into communism, so...
Exactly. Marx is socialist.
Could you have socialists? Well, no.
I think that there are non-Marxist socialists. I've talked to some of them.
Yeah, but what are they? They're basically anarchists, aren't they? The ones that reject the theory of history, don't they?
Some of them do tend in an anarchist direction, which makes no sense for given what the theory of socialism is, which is centralized control of the means of production by the workers, which ultimately means by the state.
I actually don't think that's. I think that there's a difference. Like I think it was to be pointed out that me and Mauritian and Pius would believe that actually that there is. I suppose this is just a difference in with us is that we don't believe that there is only two positions of state control over the economy or private control. We believe that corporatism, as existed in fascist states, was an objectively different system that you can't really compare it in the same way. You can't say that even though it was in the name Dinesh, the National Socialists were not socialists the way like the communists or the progressives are.
Okay, I'm not sure I understand that enough to agree or disagree.
So the basis of the idea of the fascist idea is that, I mean, again, the theory of corporatism is that instead of, the workers, quote unquote, having complete control over the means of production, you have it basically divided among the workers, the factory owners, and the state and mediated for the benefit of the nation.
Okay, but how is the nation, in concrete terms, actually treated as distinct from the state?
It isn't.
So,
well, it is.
That seems to completely undermine your point.
No, hold on. It is in a metaphysical sense, but I think Mauritian, you've read more on this. You could probably elaborate better than I could.
My brain kind of switched off. I was just letting.
So basically, what you're saying is that Marxist socialism manages industry for the benefit of the workers, or claims to manage industry for the benefit of the workers, while National Socialism claims to manage industry for the benefit of the nation.
Yes.
Okay, but since in both cases, what actually happens is for the benefit of the state, I don't see as how the distinction is really that important, or how it really gives us a third position.
But Ben, you've read Hegel. You know that a lot of these people assume the state and the people to be synonymous.
Yeah, and
aren't they the same thing? under their own philosophy.
Sure, but you're trying to assert that.
But you're saying that they can't help the Marxists aren't help the workers because they're helping the state, but they're the same thing under their philosophy. So
sure, that doesn't seem to be a problem for what I'm saying, though.
So then why make that assertion then? Because you basically said that two things aren't equal when they are in fact.
What I've said is, okay, Fritz and you seem to be claiming that
Actually disagreeing with
National Socialism isn't really socialism because it's managing the resources of the nation for the nation instead of for the workers.
That's not what I'm saying, actually, because Fritz has a kind of a low-resolution version.
Oh, okay. Well, let's hear what you have to say on this.
Marxism, the difference between Marxism and National Socialism or fascism or whatever you want to fucking call it, right, is that Marxism obviously desires the synthesis between the bourgeoisie with the proletariat winning out, whereas under fascist economic theory, they believe in the existence of all the classes continuing as they would.
Mm-hmm. There's not an abolishment of an upper class. The upper class still exists.
Well, they're working towards the exploitation
and the betterment of the state.
The betterment of the nation, which is the state.
Okay, but that doesn't really seem to have. That doesn't really seem to give National Socialism a third economic position. It seems to have a third philosophy or a different philosophy of history, but not really a different economic policy.
Well, considering the economies are managed for different things, surely that would make them distinct economic policies. Right?
In the upper classes,
and there was actual difference in the fact that private industries in Germany and Italy were not eliminated.
And you can actually observe the results of Nazi economics in Finland today. So,
I mean, corporationism is basically the idea that private property is coordinated under public guilds in order to produce to the demands of the state. Whereas, obviously, Marxism is everything's in the public possession. Exactly.
Okay, so can you give I'm trying to get just the economics of this straight without bringing in philosophy of history. So if I could.
Well, I mean, I just explained to you fascist Italy's economic policy.
You've said that it didn't eliminate private industry.
No, it didn't. But private industry was coordinated through guilds or corporations.
Okay. Essentially, everything goes towards the betterment of the state.
Well,
the guild,
not everything, but the majority.
I'm not real clear on how the guilds work.
It's like syndical. It's actually
it's Nazi, yeah.
It comes from the philosophy of Georges Sorel. Like it's basically national syndicalism, really.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not real familiar with national syndicalism either. I'm sorry.
Syndicalism was like, I don't know. Imagine if instead of Bolshevism, which directed economic power effective through the workers organizations like the Bolsheviks or like the worker Soviets. Imagine if instead Marxism directed through workers unions.
Actually, that's a really good way of describing it. Like they were kind of coordinated through.
So it's mixed capitalism, but heavily unionized.
Yeah, I'd say that's whack.
Exactly.
Okay, so
that's syndicalism, but yes,
that's national syndicalism because anarcho-syndicalism is different. But let's not complicate things.
Okay.
So National Socialism is actually mixed capitalism, but heavily unionized. Is that the end? Is that the bottom line of this?
It's not any emphasis applying this.
Completely different because the assumptions are different. That's what I'm arguing.
Frankly, a similarity would have been the economy of the United States during the war, in which yes, private industry,
private industry all contributed to the betterment. Of the state.
Exactly. Private industry still existed, like Ford or General Motors,
but they were compensated by the state to provide for it.
Exactly. And there was an emphasis on workers' regulations as well.
Oh, so there's a lot of private industry, but the state's the main contractor.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, that's a good way of putting it.
That's exactly how it is. Yeah.
That instead under capitalism, production is geared essentially towards whatever the
people,
free market
the
wants.
free market wants. Yeah.
Whereas under corporate system,
This still doesn't seem to be a third position, though. It seems to fall neatly on the spectrum from
it's
from
essentially
capitalism to socialism.
it's essentially a compromising between.
No, Ben, it's because
okay.
It's because the metaphysical presuppositions are completely different. They're idealists, fascists, whereas both capitalists and socialists, in their absolute at the very least, are all basically materialists.
Okay. Well,
can be compatible with other views.
Okay, so I think I've always thought that capitalism to socialism was a spectrum, not just a binary.
Well, no, this
I disagree.
This is actually our disagreement, right? Is that not only is it not, do we not think it's a binary, we don't think it's a spectrum either. You can make the argument, I suppose, that yes, as opposed to a completely deregulated capitalist system, on that spectrum, that you could place corporatism on that, but I don't think that it's actually very useful to do that. I think it'd be more useful to understand that that it's not a purely binary economic binary spectrum, but rather that there are other factors, not just the level of state involvement with the economy.
Well, I mean, I disagree with that. I disagree with that as well. I think that what we should be doing is looking at the motivations behind the economic policy and putting that on some sort of spectrum, not looking at the actual end result.
Mauritian wants to look at the actual reason why the policy is
implemented. Point. That's sort of actually what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm always looking at stuff from a philosophical perspective more than a historical one. And that means that I have to be open to considering a lot of positions that haven't ever actually gotten a political coalition behind them as being possible positions. Whereas if you're in history instead of in philosophy and looking at this from a historical perspective, then you're much more limited in the things you can consider, because you can only consider things that have actually been tried or have been advocated by a major party at some point.
Excuse me, I'm not sure how we're arguing historically. We're just providing historical examples as a way to elucidate our points.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't mean that as an attack. But what I'm saying is, so my saying that the economic systems are disconnected from the metaphysics is because it's theoretically possible to argue to a lot of different economic systems from completely different metaphysics than the ones that have been popular among advocates of the economic systems.
That's precisely why I'm saying that we argue from a perspective of what they assume to be true about the world.
Yes, and again, my point, we actually do agree, Mauritian, is that only thinking about it in terms of government, state control over the economy is not ultimately very fruitful when you're looking at the bigger picture. The fact that, if you're taking the sort of Dinesh D'Souza position of, oh, look, the Nazis had a relatively high degree of state control over the economy, so therefore the left, the progressives are actually Nazis.
They had a sales tax over 80%. That must mean they're socialists.
Well, exactly. I mean, and the thing is, it's not even all that useful to talk about because, the thing is, I don't believe in the horseshoe theory either, because I think that the Nazis and the communists were actually significantly different from each other.
Well, hell, I don't. I think so. I think horseshoe theory is right on.
Oh, that's what you.
Oh no!
Oh boy. That's it. No, that's even more blue-pilled than the Dinesh D'Souza spectrum.
That's the real racist guys. I mean,
no. This is even worse than the. I don't want to be mean to you, Ben, but this is even worse than the Democrats are the real racists. This is both are bad. Be a centrist, me an intellectual. Never pick a side.
I don't believe in picking a side between Nazis and communists.
You don't have to. But
They're not.
That's not the point.
Oh my god!
I mean,
they
to
aren't.
the extent that I would, it would only be as a strategic move in order to get rid of one of them, like in World War II.
Ben, you're missing the point.
Oh my god!
Like, Ben, we're just saying that they aren't. We don't believe in horseshoe theory because their assumptions are different, right? We're not saying that you have to choose between the two.
There's
Well,
no.
okay.
They aren't a binary. There's no
Horseshoe
either a Nazi
theory-
or communist or
Horseshoe theory is the
free
idea
market.
that they start the end result starts being very similar once you get to either of these extremes.
That's wrong.
In politics.
That's not true.
That's wrong though. Like the assumptions are entirely different. That's going to influence.
I think
things
Look,
like-
take
I
Portugal's
think
Estado
experience
Novo.
shows that it is true.
Take
No,
Portugal's
actually,
Estado Novo
look,
and put it up
it's-
against Venezuela.
You're
And
arguing
tell me
against a guy with a degree in history on this, and you're arguing against a guy who has got like quite good qualifications in history as well. I can tell you, the Nazis and the communists functioned very differently on even a micro level because their assumptions were different. Doesn't mean that that like people didn't die. Of course, people die, but they die for different reasons.
Well, sure, they
That's what
died for
matters.
different reasons. It is the horseshoe theory is not really about the reasons people do things for.
I mean, this
It's
is
about what people actually do.
Then surely they're working towards a result, right? And that result will happen provided the events happen in a certain way, right? So you should be looking at the end as well as the justification behind the means, not
You
just
also think
like,
about this. It's just
happened.
because the results of two things happen to end up being similar does not mean that you should consider them as ultimately similar themselves. Because imagine if you apply this, let's say, to religion. Like there's the results of both Christianity and Islam is that you have clergy. That's one of the results. Those are very similar. Those two religions are very different.
Sure,
Now,
but I might say
I don't think there's actually
I
all
think
that much.
that when it comes to extremism, that becoming an extremist for almost any idea, no matter what the idea is, you can exaggerate the hell out of it to turn it into something corrupted and bad, no matter what it is.
And aren't our attitudes towards abortion and gay marriage kind of extreme in their own right, particularly in my own country?
Sure, but both of those,
Doesn't that mean that that's a
both
bad
the
thing,
abortion
according to our
issue and the issue of homosexuality can be twisted into something bad. If you have somebody who is just going to be a serial killer and go around killing gay people or killing and torturing gay people because homosexuality is wrong, that's taking that idea that homosexuality is wrong to an extreme past reason.
I'm still not seeing how opposing abortion would somehow translate. At least, obviously, we're achieving sanity here.
You just start going around shooting abortionists. I mean, if somebody goes around shooting abortionists in the street, just at random because abortion's bad. That would be taking that idea that abortion's bad to an extreme that would, I think, not.
So you're saying that. So you're saying
right.
that. I think that 95 to 100% of people in the 18th century would have done that. Does that mean that they were in an extremist era, or would that mean that the definitions of extreme were different?
The definitions of extreme are going to be somewhat.
I mean,
different.
technically, if you think about it this way, I mean, abortionists technically are murderers, so they would theoretically deserve the death penalty.
You could argue that.
nations. I mean,
yeah, but you have to do things through the rule of law as much as you can, to the extent that you have law.
I mean, the communists killed millions of people under their own laws during the 30s. I don't see how that makes much of a difference.
Or what? I'm not seeing the connection here that you're.
Okay. So you're arguing that because under the rule of law, that abortionists are executed, right? Therefore, it's a good thing. From what I can tell.
What? What I'm saying is that people generally shouldn't be assassinating abortionists, and should instead try to get abortion outlawed through the rule of and rely on the rule of law.
That's just nutcases acting like nutcases. That isn't the natural result of an ideology. I mean,
Well, I'm saying you can take any idea and twist it into
the way you're communicating
something that'll create a nutcase.
But Ben, the way you're communicating extremism to us suggests that if it's within the rule of law, it's fine. But we know from the Nazi and communist regimes that just because it's within the rule of law doesn't mean it's not extreme.
Yeah, that's true. All I was that
I think he was. I
wasn't making the point about rule of law part of the definition of extremism. That just happens to be something that makes that an extreme in our present circumstances.
But you were just arguing. Never mind.
My general point was that any idea can be twisted into an extreme form that will be bad.
Okay. I mean, I think if we're going to work this back towards something actually useful to talk about, is we were discussing the horseshoe theory, right?
Yeah.
Now, I think the important thing is that is the horseshoe theory supposed to measure results or premises? Because the premises, I think we'd argue, of the Nazis versus the communists were actually very different. Maybe if the outcome in certain broad areas is
every serious statement of horseshoe theory I've ever heard makes it about results, and they usually explicitly say that it's about results.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not saying that Nazis and communists have the exact same ideas or anything like that.
Maybe you're saying they're very similar, which they.
I'm saying that you end up with similarly horrible results.
I think, though, the problem with that line of thinking is that it leads toward it. Even if it's supposed to be about the results, people end up viewing this as a justification that it's to think that the presuppositions are similar and that the Nazis and the communists' ideology is very similar, which it's not.
I do notice some similar presuppositions between communists and neo-Nazis.
Actually, I have a question genuinely for Fritz. Besides Nazi Germany, how many of the fascist regimes actually committed genocide? Because I don't think it was that many. Because I can't remember Italy doing any. I can't remember Romania doing any.
There was political killing, certainly, but never. It was never anywhere on the scale of like
that happens
actual
now.
genocide.
That happens now in our country. So
yeah. That is a good point. Is that none of the Spain, Portugal, Italy, these countries didn't really. Well, what about the
one thing I might point out about the idea of slavery of National Socialism as an economic idea is that people who want to advocate for those ideas in economics really need to just disconnect them from Nazi Germany. Instead of calling it, for instance, the German economic system, just call it the Finnish economic system. It's just really easy to just change labels, and then you don't have to talk about Nazi Germany anymore, and you might actually have a shot.
It's still
I mean, the Republicans are completely different, separate from Nazi Germany, and that didn't work. The left continued to try and connect the Republicans, especially Donald Trump, with the Nazis, even though he has pretty much nothing.
They'll do that about anyone they don't like.
Yeah, and I think that's why the alt-right have sort of got it into their heads that, well, maybe it'd be better if you just said, we're going to sort of, they tend to still distance themselves at least somewhat from it, but
I don't think that the alt-right is this massive political juggernaut that a lot of people think it is. I think it's going to grow. I think it's growing, and I think it'll continue to grow. But I don't think that it's going to overtake libertarianism as the basic outlook of the Republicans that we've started to see since the end of the Bush era.
The issue, though, I see is that I think the biggest reason why the alt-right is growing is because I think increasingly disaffected young white males
are seeing almost every organization and institution as being anti-white to some degree. That, you know, Republicans are going to disavow, you know, any advocacy for white people. Churches, unfortunately, are going to do the same thing. Literally, it seems they are choosing the white nationalists because it seems the white nationalists are the only people who are not going to talk about white privilege. And this is something, again, if we're going to talk about it from the Christian perspective point, that this is a real change that has to happen in, you know, both Catholic and Protestant circles. The fact that, you know, they need to stop talking about, condemning racism. They need to stop doing that, because I'm almost certainly pushing away a good number of young disaffected white males who should be going to church. And I think
almost a non-problem now as well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is,
at least in a minorities against majority sense, at least.
I mean, the thing is that, of course, if they were talking about, if they actually were like the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops saying, like, you know, standing against racism, it's like, you know, I would be totally with them. I'm totally with them in principle. You know, at least, you know, I am against that. You know, the sort of discrimination they're probably thinking of against the basis of skin color. But the problem is that not only is the definition of racism constantly changing, and not only is it that the instances that they're thinking of are actually exceptionally rare these days, but racism against white people is never, ever actually talked about. And of course, beyond all of this, the problem is that, you know, the argument I would use, though, is that there's vastly more important things to talk about than immigration reform or welcoming refugees, because the thing is, not to play, I don't want to play this card, but, you know, if you know, we're as Christians supposed to care about, you know, the fate of black people, well, how many black people has the alt-right killed in the past 2 years? Could we say no one?
But vice versa.
How many black people has abortion killed?
I don't understand what you're getting at, though.
I'm saying that the problem is that, you know, a lot of Christian and Catholic leaders are falling into the trap of talking about, like, racism.
How bad the alt-right is. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
The threat that is posed by the alt-right is that their ideology, which is largely pagan and pro-abortion, is going to overtake Christian social conservatism as the main form of social conservatism in American political discourse.
I'm not sure I'd agree
that's the threat that is posed by the alt-right.
Now, I actually haven't thought about that's a good point. And the thing is that I think one of the ways that conservative Christians can you know, take wind out of that sail is by not playing the same, by not appeasing the racial politics of the progressives. If they would stop talking about white privilege and refugees for 1 second, and if they would actually address, you know, racism, if they would once address that racism exists against white people, then that would probably take a lot of the wind out of the sails of the alt-right. Because again, as I said, one of the biggest reasons the alt-right exists and is getting members is because young disaffected white males see them as the only group in society that doesn't hate white people.
Well, I must say that this, at least my own church, is a rat's nest of problems. But I might say that this, at least, is not one of our problems. Race, I mean.
Because everybody's white.
So far,
exactly.
we're overwhelmingly white, but none of our ministers, so far as I have heard, ever talk about race in either direction. And when they do, it seems to just largely assume that Martin Luther King was basically right. I mean, but it doesn't, you know, it doesn't really talk about race as a political thing, you know?
Yeah, and this is the thing, right? It just
doesn't come up. And I think that's a good way to treat it, is just, if you want to end racism, you treat race as a non-issue. That's how you end racism.
And this is the problem, right? This is that
either church leaders should just not, they should say, yes, we condemn racial discrimination in all forms, like on their websites or whatever, and leave it at that. And only address it if if Klansmen actually go running around shooting black people, or the Black Panthers go around shooting white people, sure, then address it. Or if they are going to address it, they need to address it fairly and say, yes, racism does exist against white people and it needs to be acknowledged.
Yeah, well, racism has always existed in all different directions. It
is especially bad against
various social contexts, and at the moment, I'd say that there's a lot more institutional racism, to the extent that that phrase means anything at all, against whites, and we actually have it codified in our laws in the form of affirmative action. That codifies honest to God racism into our laws against whites. It does. I mean, that's on the paper. You can't deny that fact. And so that's a form of anti-white racism that we've definitely got to address. But by and large, though, I want to be real careful with this, because I don't think being white is what's important. I think being a moral realist is what's important.
No, I'm not. Yeah, we're saying that unfortunately, many even conservative church leaders of both Catholic and Protestant circles have, taken the bait when it comes to racial issues. That they're following the progressive narrative that racism is power plus privilege, or white people have privilege, and they only talk about the alt-right and they never talk about racism against white people. That's the problem, right? It's not that it's not that I want them to start embracing. I don't want churches to start embracing, white nationalism. I just wish they would stop, preaching the progressive line on race, because I think it's hurting them. Yeah,
it is. And I have a series of, well, it's really one sermon, but it's broken up into 3 videos on my channel. That is Portrait of a Real Man by Dr. Tony Evans. And this speech was given, I think, in the late 80s or early 90s. And it really lays on the line what the real problem is. And the real problem is
the Jews.
Isn't racism. The real problem is that there's no dads. That's the real problem. In the black community, the problem is there's no dads.
The thing is, though, now it's a problem in the white community as well.
Oh yeah, it's starting to be. Fatherlessness has become an epidemic. It's
a normalized way of life, since it's pretty much most people now are born do not know who their father is.
Or if they know who their father isn't really acting like a father should, They don't have a family. They have a mom, but they don't have a family.
Single mothers are just
well, it's not always the single mother's fault.
Well, no, I'm
sometimes
speaking.
Sometimes it is, but the whole MGTOW thing. You don't have to talk to most MGTOWs for very long to realize why they ended up getting divorced. It's because they're insufferable.
Yeah, they're fucking losers.
Maybe there's some real problems with how society treats men and how women treat men and all that stuff. Yeah, sure. Maybe everything they're saying is true on that. But they're insufferable. No wonder they got divorced. Their wife wanted to divorce them.
Yeah, I live with one. I live with a MGTOW, and he is the most emotionally immature person I think I've ever met.
And so I've got to say, there's certain things about some of the men's rights activism that there's certain truths that they point out, but they're typically very nasty people ultimately, And also,
Did
like I've said about feminists, there are some things that the MGTOWs describe that are happening, which they evaluate as bad and which I would evaluate as good.
Such as?
Such as the rule of women and children first.
Oh yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's a very traditional notion. I don't know whether the phrase goes back before the Titanic in the 20th century, but I think the sentiment certainly goes very far back, perhaps even to the dawn of man, that far back.
I think the other thing is that, well, actually, I've heard though that, like, I don't know if this applies to life, life-threatening situations, but apparently in like Islamic countries, women actually have to walk behind men as like a symbol of like their obedience to males, whereas in the West, women, usually let women go first.
I actually, when we talk about that, I might say women going first in the West, it hasn't traditionally been about matriarchy or female supremacy.
I mean, in the West, we do it as just a symbol of respect for women.
Respect for women, but it's not just about it. That is kind of what it symbolizes. But there's also a practical thing to be considered, and that is something that it does for men's psychology. Something we've got to be teaching young men and boys, and this is something we've got to get straight if we want to solve this metaphysics problem you were talking about, Mauritian, is that it's the man's responsibility to guard and protect and care for and provide for the women and children. That's something that's really basic and fundamental, not just to humans, but to the basic idea of having packs, even,
You think about one of the issues,
even on a real deep natural level, that's important for people.
One of the issues that exists right now is you can actually, I don't agree with the feminists, but you can sort of understand why our modern society would think the idea of like the woman having to being expected to take care of the men, like in terms of cooking and cleaning and sucking their dick, but is that in an era in which both partners work in office jobs that are not the most demanding, maybe in terms of hours, but it's not backbreaking hard labor. If they're both essentially working equal hours, relatively speaking, and the man comes home and is like, "Hey, wife, make me a sandwich," he's gonna be like, "Make your own fucking sandwich." But in an era, perhaps like if the husband is a coal miner and is working 12 hours a day, fucking in horrible conditions, you're damn right. The wife would probably understand. Maybe it's sort of becoming of me to provide for him or do nice things for him, since he's doing all this. Especially if that husband was in the war.
Oh,
but
yeah,
but in a situation we have now, in which both partners are working, and even if you're working long hours in an office, that's not exactly, that's not slaving away. You're in a comfortable, either air-conditioned or heated office, sitting on your butt doing paperwork on a computer.
Yeah, and I might say the idea, naturally speaking, there's this great story by Orson Scott Card, which is Teacher's Pet, or is it Teacher's Pest? I forget. It's one of those two. It's either Teacher's Pet or Teacher's Pest. It's set in the Ender's Game universe, and it is the story in which Ender's parents meet. So it's a prequel short story. And Teresa Wiggin is Ender's mother, and she grew up a Mormon, while Ender's father, John Paul Wiggin, grows up a Catholic. And they meet in college, in which Jean Paul is in Teresa's class of human community, which is apparently a subject in the future. It seems to be a mixture of sociology, anthropology, history, and evolutionary biology. And she, in the class, lays down such a devastating critique of the whole perspective of feminism and gender-based activism and overpopulation alarmism that, I mean, it's just like jaw-droppingly awesome. It's like a platonic dialogue. I think I read it to distributors at one point.
Say it in a more boring way.
What?
Nothing. You did not. You may need to. You may want to work on your delivery.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Anyway, the point it gets to is this:
fucking hell.
what is who is more valuable to human communities, the males or the females? And so people would try to argue it was the males that were most valued because the males in charge and patriarchy and all that stuff. And she says, no, actually, males are expendable. We expend them in wars before anyone else. We use them as shields whenever there's danger. We risk them to go out and hunt, and whatever is the difficult job that's needing doing outside of the home, where things are less safe. That's where we send the men. Whereas where men are expendable,
could you please speed it up? I'm sorry, but
where men are expendable to the community, women are the community. The most valuable resource to any human community is not food or water or what are the different resources? Communication, medicine, transportation. It's not any of those things. The most valuable resource for any human community is wombs. That's the most valuable resource, because wombs are expensive, sperm is cheap. And if all of the men of the tribe die, then the tribe will continue. It will just get some more men from somewhere else. But if all the women of the tribe die, that is the end of the tribe. Period.
I think I could say this in a more concise manner.
Sure.
Because I was about to say, you do need to work on your delivery. I'm brutally honest. I'm sorry.
I don't know back for its fucking hell.
So the point is that men are expendable because they're sent off in wars, and women are not. Women can do something. Women can produce children, and producing children before modern medicine, even with modern medicine, is labor intensive, no pun intended, and potentially dangerous. And so females' reproductive ability is incredibly valued and is the most valuable commodity in a society. And it's
right.
For that men fight and work.
Yeah.
Because again, you also think that one man can impregnate as many women as he essentially can. Well, as only
biologically speaking, he could. Woman, maybe not socially, but biologically,
no, I know
sure.
That, but the point is that a woman can only have one child at a time. And yeah. And so essentially the way the primal pre-Christian way this was done was you had effectively harem cultures in which, since sexuality was not regulated like it is under Christianity and other religious moral laws, you have the position in which since your only limit to how many women you can impregnate is how effective you are at doing that, basically through your
physical appearance, prowess in certain areas.
So,
and
what?
wealth, you have a position of, well, you have a small percentage of the males, being the alphas, are able to reproduce with the majority of the women, and then the rest of the men have to fight over a minority of the women, and so there's a lot of infighting, and you still end up with a large portion of the male population that becomes incredibly sexually frustrated because they are not able to reproduce.
Yeah, that's the problem with with harem culture.
Yeah.
But the point is, no matter whether you have marriage or a harem culture, it's still the case that wombs are the most valuable commodity for any human community.
Demographics is destiny.
And an important thing to realize about human psychology is that we're built to operate this way. We're built so that where men and women get their satisfaction out of life, to the extent that we get a satisfaction out of this life, we don't get our ultimate satisfaction out of this life. If we're Christians, we believe we get our ultimate satisfaction from Christ. But the satisfaction that we do get in this life depends on our psychology being built to work this way. So men who say, men being expendable, the MRAs who are saying, men being expendable is just such a bad thing. No, it's not. And if you think that it is, then you are going to be sad and miserable because you're denying something that is a truth about your own nature. And so that's the real problem with the MGTOW idea, is that it's denying something that is important and valuable about masculine nature.
Bit of coincidence that they're all quite feminine as well. I mean, think about it.
How? I'm not disagreeing. I'm just not sure I understand.
Well, I mean, the fact that they care for themselves so much, and the fact that they will throw people under the bus like God knows what. In a lot of ways, like women can be really catty in social situations, and MGTOWs are very similar. They're also very neurotic. I mean, this is based on my own personal experience with actual MGTOWs. I don't know if you've ever talked to them, but they...
Yeah, I have. They're insufferable.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, the way they run socially is more reminiscent of women, although it's obviously not the same. I'm just saying, I was wondering if there might be some sort of biological connection there.
And again, this is the
the
result. They are a result of the fact that our sexual culture has regressed toward more towards the harem culture since we have gotten rid of the Christian idea of forced monogamy.
I disagree. I think they're just fucking losers. I think they've always
because they aren't able to reproduce.
No, but no,
yeah,
I mean,
sure.
they
my
don't have
point,
the power
though, was
to
about
reproduce.
how they're denying something important about the nature of masculinity in a very similar way to how feminists are denying something that's fundamentally important about feminine nature, which is largely that women don't have to prove themselves the way men do. Men have to prove that they're valuable, that they can provide for, they can protect, they can do what men are supposed to do. But women are already there by default. Women don't by their nature have to prove their worth the way that men do. They don't have that built into their psychology that they have to do that.
Built in their biology that they have value. This is the thing, right? Is that the problem of why MGTOW is going to fail is because it's
going to fail. No, it's not. It's an emotional outburst from a bunch of losers.
Well, I mean, it's going to fail because it doesn't have bebes, and you have to have bebes.
Well, that in the sense that that's not at all. That's they have the idea that, if their idea is that in the long term it's going to work because, if men just say we're not going to have any interaction with women, then like the women will come crawling back. But no, that's not how it works, because women, as all the stereotypes go, are able to sort of abstain from sex a lot longer than men can. Now, I mean, this
a lot more easily than men can.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, it's
now there is a historical example of the opposite of this happening. I think in Lysistrata, where the Spartan women say, "We want our men to stop going to war because things suck. We're going to refrain from having sex with them until they sign a peace treaty." Now that could
hey, if you want to see that in real
out.
life, just go to a nightclub on a Saturday night. Fucking hell, you don't even have to try.
I might say the thing about signing the peace treaty. See things like that, which are sprinkled here and there through history, show that patriarchy has, in large measure, been a sort of, you might say, a noble lie. If there could be a noble lie, then the noble lie is patriarchy, because patriarchy has never really existed. The truth about gender relations through all of history has been that if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
Well, it's also the idea that men and women they've led, but in their own respective spaces. Women lead it. Have traditionally, they lead in terms of like the small local community. Like they get with the other women to decide on certain issues, and of course they're sort of the primary homemaker. So they get to make the decisions of, well, what are we going to have for dinner tonight, or I'm going to make the dinner. Whereas the men are going to make the sort of more broad decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I think I believe in what's it called, complementarianism, and complementarianism isn't simply the men make all the decisions. It's that the men make the final decision, but that doesn't mean that women have no input or whatever, because that would be simple. That would be simple chauvinism, male chauvinism, and simple male chauvinism is bad. It's also a lie because it's never really existed. It's because, like I said, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. And even though men officially make the big decisions, those decisions don't really last very long if the women are unhappy with them. let's just say a man can really put his foot down and say, no, I'm not going to bend on this, but he's not going to be a happy man if he does that.
I have no idea why Christianity Today has an article that says Black women saved evangelicalism by voting against Roy Moore. It's like, I mean, this is the thing. It's like, this is what makes conservative Christians pissed off at a lot of these leaders, because it's like, okay, so do you care about abortion or do you fucking not? Because that's where a lot of these come down to. Because it's like, yes, maybe the Democrats or maybe the Republican candidate was a bit of a scumbag. I don't think it was, but here's the thing. Is abortion more of do they care more about fake racism than they do about abortion? If they do, then they're being horrible Christians.
I've seen some pro-life magazines running anti-Roy Moore editorials on the assumption that he's guilty. And some of these are pretty hardcore pro-life outlets. So I might say, just in fairness, they're not alone in thinking that Roy Moore is guilty. So I think you do have to take that into account. That one could argue that if Roy Moore is guilty, then electing him may do more long-term damage, and ends up being proven guilty, may do more long-term damage to the pro-life cause than just losing this election. And I don't think that's true, but there are. I'm not going to say that the people who are arguing that are all just controlled opposition or whatever. I'm not going to.
I think it's the fact
down
that
some conspiracy road on that.
I mean, this is the problem, right? Is that, I mean, this is one of the things that is, well, the Catholics do have a similar problem, but I mean, I get really sort of sick at a lot of these conservative evangelicals who, again, they are pro-life, but I don't understand how they think that it's perfectly acceptable to celebrate voting for a Democrat. I have no idea why.
Yeah, the pro-life. I think the editorials I read didn't say to vote for Doug Jones. They just said don't vote for Roy Moore. So,
I mean, that's kind of, considering there's just a dichotomy in your politics. Surely that does imply latter, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I don't know. All I'm saying is it's just not as simple as support Roy Moore or else you're pro-abortion. I'm not sure it's that simple, but I do think that Moore's probably innocent, and if he had either admitted it or if we had actual proof of the allegations, that'd be a completely different thing. But based on our knowledge before this election and during this election, I think it made sense to still support him. Sorry, I thought that was kind of a long and boring explanation of that.
You know, I've had an idea for a new shitpost. Why don't we make a shitpost called "Dinesh D'Souza is the real Democrat"? I reckon that could be really good.
I mean, I know. This is the thing that I've been basically. I mean, again, this whole thing of Christians and race. Even if I'm Catholic or Protestant, it's something that it's effectively the reason why I started my channel, is because I was so fucking sick of conservative Christians being progressive on race, and it needs to stop. Because first off, it's immoral, because if they're, by their own standards, if being racist is immoral, well, they're racist against white people. But the bigger problem is that they're essentially establishing the precedent that racism is worse than abortion. That supporting Donald Trump and being tough on illegal immigration is worse than abortion, because they are saying that it'd be better for a pro-choice Democrat. Now, in the article, and a lot of pro-life evangelicals have all but said that it's better that a pro-choice Democrat wins the Senate seat than for a pro-life Republican that they think that they have some problems with. And I think anybody would have to agree, more people are killed by abortion than racism, but they just don't seem to care.
Well, imagine my shock.
Yeah,
I mean, it's very bizarre, because as soon as
anything wants them to change the status quo, because then they have to adapt.
I mean, these people aren't even really in power.
They want to be.
They're not politicians. What? No, I don't think that's the case. These are
I mean, the entire backlash to Trump was basically from not the haves or from the haves and the have a little want mores. The kind of middle class people. You don't see many working class people whining about Trump. Besides the people that live on welfare in Los Angeles or whatever, who've been brainwashed.
You mean blacks?
Well, they could be Mexicans as well. They could be white. Some of them,
white Mexicans.
They exist.
That's the how there's that
there is a significant population of white Mexicans.
This is the problem that I have with that. There's that animation of the world map, and the white countries are being replaced. Every other country in the world is is just black people. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I know the exact one.
Yeah, it's no, it's not how it works. You'd actually have a good amount of white people in Latin America, and also not everybody that's Not all non-white people are black, you idiots.
Yeah, one thing that
The Japanese are honorary Aryans.
the thing about this whole race thing is no matter what the demographics say, white people are to a large extent still actually have a better rate of having stable families than a lot of these other groups, at least in the United States. And so even if they start being in the minority, they're still going to be a richer than average minority because stable families build wealth.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not sure how that's really relevant to the concerns of the alt-right, though. They don't particularly care for that.
I'm not sure what you mean. That does seem to allay a lot of their concerns.
What, like, just because someone's got money means that they will be happy?
I don't think the alt-right's really concerned with individual happiness. I thought they were about the future of the white race or whatever.
Yeah, but like you've got to be aware that a lot of these people, these racial collectivists, I mean, they derive their happiness from a harmonious mono-racial community, don't they? They don't derive it from money.
Oh, well then they're not. You're saying you're saying you actually buy their pretense of a neutral separatism.
No, I'm just presenting your argument, their argument from their perspective to you. I'm not saying I believe any of this. Like, I'm neutral on the race realism thing.
Okay, well, I think that when a lot of these alt-right types say that they're actually not pushing for white supremacy, they're just wanting every nation to keep itself separate, and that the different nations aren't superior or inferior to one another. I don't think that's being quite honest. That stuff.
I don't think you're correct.
You think they are being honest when they say that?
Honest.
Yeah, I don't. We just disagree there.
Because what would they really gain from, like, just being better?
What?
What would they really gain from just being better? Like, as a collective group? Like, wow, what have you done? Absolutely nothing. You gain nothing. Apart from the feeling that you're better than someone else, like, wow, that really does so much for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you're a complete failure and horrible person, but at least you're white.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of the alt-right thinks like that, at least not the public figures. Otherwise, they wouldn't be public figures. Because people can sense that shit.
What?
Well,
people can sense what?
They can sense that kind of resentment. You know, that kind of feeling of wanting to be better, and they're not very successful as a result.
I think the whole alt-right movement's built on resentment. What are you talking about?
I don't think it is. I think it's mostly... I think it's based on the fact that they believe that their communities are breaking down. I don't think that's necessarily resentful. It's not that they think the evil Jews, they're out earning me.
Well... I've seen a lot less focus on the Jews and more on the Muslims lately.
Yeah, they're killing members of their community. Are you surprised?
Well, I was thinking about the alt-right in America, where there isn't really as much of the actual killing going on.
There was a bombing the other day in one of your biggest cities. What are you talking about?
Oh, I had not heard of.
No one died.
That was the one in New York. That's right. That was attempted, and it didn't actually succeed.
But
yeah.
The point is that the intent is there. So of course they're going to have existential worry about their communities. What to say? Obviously, I don't fucking agree with them, but like, you can kind of see where they're coming from. You know,
it's not impossible. I mean, they do make sense in some regards, although I think they have the wrong approaches in many instances, and a lot of their leaders are terrible. But
Someone's asked me, will any of you do a live reaction to Godless Cranium or Professor Stick? Jesus Christ.
Professor Stick did an anti-Ben McLean video like a year ago, and I didn't see it until this month.
Oh God, I responded to him and he gave me this massively moody response. It was really funny. Like, I responded to him and I basically made him look like a retard in the whole video, and I said, hey, I've made a video responding to you. And it's like, it's okay. If I really cared, you'd know about it. And it's like, it's like, you whiny bastard.
Yeah. Basically, he was...
I love this. There's still a bunch of like fake dating bots in the chat, Pius. So I just keep replying to them. Be gone, thought.
This
dating site for sex. Go to Sarah23.ml, and it's like be gone, thought.
Oh God, naughty Ben! Why did they find Ben here?
I will have to go and block a few more bots. It looks like.
Ben, do you have a secret you're keeping from us?
I certainly do not. I certainly do not.
Director of Black.com or something, because that would explain a lot.
I certainly do not frequent dating sites.
I love that. I love that internet historian video. There are no hot singles in your area. Right? Try and like go on all those sites, like on the sites, like the ads on 4chan, where it's like hot singles are waiting for you in your area, and they try and do it, but they all want your credit card, or like the funniest part is when it showed the actual pictures, and it's a bunch of like ugly middle-aged women. It's like, these are the hot singles in your area.
You don't have these problems when you're celibate.
Meet hot OAPs in your area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you know, I am needing to start looking more into
do it now.
I am needing to start looking more into finding
Mormon,
the hooking up with the lady types, but I don't think I'd be doing it through dating websites. I think that's kind of a
I might have to. I
really
don't know. I mean,
bad idea. Fritz,
you
need to get into a position of
financial independence.
Yes,
no, you don't need any of that. Just go to a girl, say hi, and develop a relationship. It's simple. It's easy.
Maybe I'm not the best person to give advice, since I haven't got a person yet. But I think it's important that you're able to provide for a family when you're really.
Oh Lord! So Icebreakers is a company that makes like breath mints, right?
Yeah.
And I like eating the non-mint ones, like the sour ones. So I've just gone
what
through.
What were we talking about before this?
My breath is fresh as shit now.
The alt-right.
We were talking about videos, response videos to us.
Yeah. Well,
What's his face? Mr. Stick. I think he did it based on the infamous atheists don't have ethics video, and he said two different things which seem to be contradicting each other. On the one hand, he says atheists aren't pro-abortion, and then almost right after he says, but abortion is perfectly fine. And like, wait, those two arguments, you have to pick one.
Well, okay, to be fair, the thing is, most people that would be pro-choice would say, we don't encourage women to have abortions. We just think they should be allowed to. I don't care. Yeah, I don't really fucking care what you call them. It's still evil. But now you do have women that do, you do have feminists that do actually encourage women to do this. And also, if you let's say you're a not fedora tipping atheist because you managed to get laid and you impregnate the girl, you probably would be pro-abortion.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the point is, if you're going to just start defending late-term abortion, then you don't have ethics. I mean, that seems pretty simple and straightforward to me. On the other hand, I didn't say that all atheists don't have ethics. there are some who realize, well, we at least need to ban abortion after 20 weeks when we know that the unborn child is capable of experiencing pain.
Well, my problem. I mean, I'm
no.
I'm all in favor of make it.
But
even if it's
those
not
people, though, that will say that moderate position, but then they still support Planned Parenthood.
This is the thing, right? Though, with abortion, is that I'm fine. I'm perfectly fine with compromises and stuff to gradually walk it back. But I'm still of the belief, now as becoming Catholic, although I believed in this prior as well, that life begins at conception. That pain capable of abortion, well, better than no laws. The problem is that that's the precedent that ability to feel pain is the start of life, where I think conception is where life begins.
Yeah, well, I used to be real solid on the whole conception is when life begins issue. However, as I've learned more about gynecology, I've discovered that a large number of fertilized eggs end up getting thrown out by normal, healthy human female biology.
That's nature. Then
yeah, and the thing is, if nature's willing to just throw out that many, then that seems to drastically undermine the idea that life is sacred at conception. Maybe implantation might be a point that makes more sense. I'm not sure. But certainly that does create a lot of confusion in the issue. And if you're a Catholic, you can say, well, the Catholic, Rome has spoken, the matter is closed. But for the rest of us who aren't Catholic, there certainly are some questions that arise at that point. But one thing I'm absolutely sure of, and that is after 9 weeks, when you transition from the embryo stage into the fetal stage, and you can look at a picture and you can tell, any young child can tell that they are looking at a picture of a baby, there's no excuse after that point.
I don't see how something looking like something means that. I don't see how that works. I think.
Does that mean that a person who's been disfigured is no longer a human?
What I mean is,
zygotes have the same.
What I mean is that there is no excuse for still being confused at that point.
What if the person's blind?
Then you abort the blind person.
I don't think I have to address that as a serious point.
It's not serious.
It's not serious.
All right. Well, what I'm saying here is, even though I'm not sure on the conception issue, I think that there can be no reasonable doubt. Certainly, by the time we reach the fetal stage, there can be no reasonable doubt at all. And any doubts that may exist would only be in the embryonic stage.
Okay. So going back to the response video stuff, I would not be surprised if Godless Cranium responded to the stream in the day, even though I yeah. Oh god, it's so funny. Do you know the whole saga, Ben? I know that Pius does, and I'm pretty certain Fritz does.
No, I don't.
Is it his video about the theft of our values?
No. Something different. He made a video asking for people to explain what Christianity can do, which atheism don't. So I made a video. And
have a consistent moral system.
I mean, it was a lot of stuff. Really.
Explain.
Okay, so I watched about 5 minutes of his response to me, and he was bitching about my thumbnails being ugly or something, and it's like, okay.
Oh god, this cranium. Oh, now I remember.
Yeah.
It's like, so I mean, I'm really mad at you. I thought I had more respect for immersion. How dare you make him sit down and make a response video to you? I mean, it was such an arduous task to make him do that. What's wrong with you?
I'll explain to Ben. I think Ben's in the dark here.
Yeah, I haven't been following all this drama.
Yeah, but he made a 20-minute long response video to me. I watched 5 minutes of it because 5 minutes in, he said first of all, he was tearing into the aesthetic of my videos as if that's something I really care about. And then he this assumes that you're a materialist atheist. I can't speak for idealist ones. And he says, well, I'm not a materialist because I once turned down a job that paid me more. And it's like,
well, that's not that. That is a common confusion about the meaning of materialism. People associate it with whatever the extreme decadence or hedonism or selfishness, and they don't focus on material acquisition of material goods as being the summum bonum. That's an idea in ethics, and sometimes that will be called materialism, and that's what is popularly thought of as being materialism outside of intellectual circles. So I just don't. I'm not all that surprised that would come up.
Now let's finish the story.
Sorry.
Okay, so I'll try and get this done quickly because my internet is going to go down in a minute.
How does that work? Your internet going down? What do you mean?
Well, like there's apparently works going on the road, so yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'll be quick.
Cables.
Yeah, I'll be quick. So basically, I said he was a retard in a stream very quickly about that, and then he had a spurg out because I called him a retard, and he made another 20-minute long video. He spent a total of 24 hours.
And then throughout the video, he complains about how much time he's dedicated to making said video.
Oh, it's daft. It's fucking stupid.
It's.
So what I wanted to say, Ben, is that one of the points you made in your, explaining moral relativism versus realism in like 2 minutes is that like that is pretty much the case, right? Anytime people say, I don't like, some idiot liberal says like, I don't like people telling, us what to do. I think it's, evil. And it's like, no, that's not what you actually believe. You would have no problem with the Catholic Church saying that, murder is wrong, but you only object to it when it comes to sexual issues because you want to be able to have whatever sexual immorality you want without consequences. That's the only time they actually want it to apply. They don't want it to apply when, with murder or theft. They only want to do it when it has to deal with sex.
Yeah, well, sex or maybe a few other things that they really want. Like sometimes you'll have like people who want to it will occasionally come up in regard to other vices, but very rarely.
Pius Mercer would have loved this. Apparently, Louis the 14th, 1685 violin is saying, "Are they talking about the Jews?"
Oh, that's funny.
But I'm thinking, I think maybe you could put it more concisely, right? That people only complain about Christian morals because it's a obstacle to them being hedonists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's and it is overwhelmingly about sex, but not exclusively about sex. But
Sure.
it's almost exclusively about sex. It's will occasionally run into it being about something else, but the number of times it's about sex.
Spark
is just
is lying about us in the chat. He said that we said the Jews invented the Holocaust.
That we said that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a troll. We've banned him on the other server. Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Hang on. I'm gonna switch tabs over and look at that.
And Louis believes him.
That.
Oh my god.
Okay. They said. I'm gonna go back here. Who's they? Is he talking about us?
Yes.
He's talking about
where?
Yeah, the four of us.
I think you're making a satire response to distributist. Are they talking about the Jews? Yeah, he says he was joking.
Sure. I mean, he always says that whenever you call him out. I think he's a troll. I don't think he has a lot of value.
I was only pretending to be retarded.
I was only pretending to be retarded.
Why are the peasants dead, Carl? Where did you put them?
Yeah, we need to be making more funny skits. All right, well, I guess I'm not banning him for now. I did put him on timeout earlier.
Is this on your Discord, Ben?
No, this is on the public chat.
Oh, Endeavor, absolutely.
He's
Absolutely.
Mr. Sparks already banned on my Discord for defending Nazism.
Endeavor.
It's like, I wasn't defending Nazism. I was defending National Socialism, but there wasn't really a distinction in his case.
Ban. Do you think Endeavor asked me? Do you think that young people would be more attracted to the church if they offered orthodoxy rather than progressivism? Absolutely. Even like with evangelical churches, like the ones that actually get more people tend to be conservative, and young people seem to be more attracted to like the Catholic Church because it's, you know. Wait, the dating site is now saying how to remove a tick. That's funny. But yeah, I think, you don't need to compromise on the morals.
I don't understand where all these bots keep coming from. I keep blocking them, and why do they keep showing up? How do they keep getting so many accounts?
What if it's someone trolling you? What if it's not actually a bot?
What if it's Louis the 14th? These are all his fidewa. I thought you'd appreciate that, Pius.
I don't know where all these bots are coming from.
The bots are kraut.
Like, can't they take a hint that they're not going to be successful in this kind of advertising? I mean, who is going to click on? Actually, you can't even click on URLs that these bots are spamming. You just have to type them in. Who is going to do that? I guess there must be some real morons in the world if making bots that do this sort of thing is profitable for someone. Maybe it's people who don't know English very well and are unfamiliar with the internet at the same time. I don't know.
Do you think it's? Louis the 14th said to me, Kraut put me in the gulag on his Discord for defending Braving Ruin, accused me of being an alt-writer when I said it many times I'm not, and for taking my shit posts of the Jews out of context. Kraut is such a little bitch. The funniest thing that happened when I was in a server and like he put me in the gulag for something I didn't do. He put everybody there. Like he like typed me. He goes, "All right, shut up. Listen to me, boy. Who was it that was spamming my DMs?" It's like I love him like trying to do that. That's after that I just left. It's like
I'm more baffled about the fact that he took Louis' like Jew video out of context.
Oh boy!
How could you do that?
I did not hit her. I did not.
I don't know, you guys.
Somebody.
So I think we're getting to the later part of this stream for sure.
This is the last few hours of it.
And do you think maybe we should start sharing the link around a little more for lulz?
No, I think we should. And we've been on here for like what, 3.5 hours.
Yeah, I think it's a good time to end.
All right, so let's
just shut it down.
But when do we want to come back and do another stream?
Never.
Well,
Distributors is not here to dominate the conversation. So
one thing that we decided we should have a stream about at some point is the question: is distributism a form of socialism or not? But was that discussed adequately, or do we want to have a stream on that?
I don't know. Whatever you want.
Well, I'm trying to come up with a good topic for another stream. I think these streams are good, but we have to have.
That y'all discuss with Mauritian that you'd like to cover again. Perhaps like the whole debate over socialism that we were going.
The whole debate on where? On what?
The whole socialism, third positionism sort of thing, the tangent that we were on earlier. I don't know, perhaps
did Kraut make another video? Maybe he did. No, the first result is now Naked Ape's debate with Kraut. Aww. You know, I like it. He's still making videos, but he's still losing subscribers. Hello?
Okay, so do a stream about Kraut. I don't really follow Kraut enough to even try that.
I've already done my bit to talk about Kraut. Maybe I should make another video. It would certainly get views, but what am I gonna say? He's still acting like an idiot.
At this point, Kraut's pretty much
He's still acting like a petty idiot.
I mean, at this point, Kraut's pretty much been mocked to the extent that he can be. I mean, he's losing subs. No one really takes him seriously anymore.
His videos are about.
I would like to make some skits that make fun of skeptics. I did like the approaching truck thing. I think we could do some more things about skeptics refusing to believe really obvious things.
Blackjack wanted me to do an impersonation for Hunter Avalon on a skit for the fossils, but about the fossils. But
I've been thinking for a while of trying to do a satire of creationist cat called Evolutionist Dog. And it is just doing everything creationist cat does, but just the opposite.
I could make one making fun of Logic, where I know what would be the parody name of Logic, like
Vulcan.
Sure. No, but like, you know how he has like the stupid suit with his terrible 3D glasses, and then the weird face mask. You should have it where it's like you're wearing it, but like you can't breathe through it, so you're just like, and you like fall over.
What does he like choke on his own?
Yeah, he chokes on his own BS. It's so poetic.
Your real name is John McClane, actually. Guy from Die Hard. So apparently somebody said that the new Star Wars movie does not have any SJW stuff in it.
I guess they won't be getting that. I think they wanted...
They wanted an award from NAMBLA, yes.
I don't know. Wasn't there like a whole thing about... Oh, goodness. I don't know. Does that mean that Rey is no longer a feminist icon? Or
I don't know. No, I think it's like, don't they want... I imagine it's like, oh, wait. Did you guys hear a Republican senator from Kentucky committed suicide?
What? Wait, what? Senator from Kentucky? What? Sorry, I wasn't paying attention to that.
Kentucky Representative Dan Johnson reportedly commits suicide.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
Reports say the Republican representative shot himself. Johnson was recently accused of sexually assaulting a teenage girl and refused to resign.
Okay, then.
Though, this was something I did want to talk about originally, was the fact that you probably can see now, like, anytime there's going to be a race, the Democrats are going to bring up people to criticize the Republican of being sexually assaulting them. And then what happens if the Republicans start doing the same? And so every election, they just have everybody accusing each other of being sexual. I mean, they sort of did this the presidential one. I think they did it by proxy with Bill Clinton. You know, they said, "Oh, Trump grabbed him by the pussy. Bill Clinton is a rapist."
Well, this is terrible.
Yes.
Apparently, this guy denied the allegations, but then he goes and commits suicide. I'm kind of wondering what was going on here. Did he actually do it? And that's why he committed suicide? He just couldn't live with the guilt of being that came when he got found out, or something else going on here. It looks like I'm wondering. I'm wondering whether things like this that start happening might get people to start re-examining all this accusations of sexual abuse stuff that's going around everywhere and start going, well, wait a minute, maybe this isn't the best way to handle this,
I mean, this is the thing that I've always been wary of is that Pius left, is the fact that like with Roy Moore, conservatives are completely willing to say, oh, let's wait till the evidence comes in, but completely believe at any time.
Believe it anytime it's during an election and it's against
completely believe it whenever it happens to Hollywood, right?
Oh,
all of that. I will not like that double standard, but I don't know what. Yeah.
I just still think it can't be a coincidence that Bill Cosby starts making some conservative sounding remarks and then a sexual abuse scandal comes out. Not before, The ones before didn't stick. There were
how does that explain?
There were some before, but all of a sudden the media just starts really pushing the latest one after he starts making some conservative remarks. Maybe he's been guilty all along or whatever, but he only gets thrown overboard after he starts making conservative remarks.
Though I
really think this whole situation of the sexual abuse allegations, how they're treated by the media seems to be determined by whether the person is in favor or not how credible the allegations are.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
The thing is that doesn't really apply with the Hollywood stuff. I don't recall Harvey Weinstein or any of the several dozen people now that have been accused. I don't think that they were saying conservative stuff. I'm not going to talk.
Yeah, they weren't.
And I'm not going to respond to Spark because he's a troll. I'm not going to respond to it. Please ban him. Ban the sick filth. Can we end the stream now?
Oh well, sure. In just a minute, I want to say there's real sexual abuse that goes on, and there's false accusations that go on.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to tell them apart is the evidence. If there's evidence, and we've got to stop this tendency of prejudging cases on just whether we like the person or not.
Mm-hmm.
Now, yeah, they did toss some Hollywood celebrities overboard, and I think celebrities in Hollywood have a lot less protection than politicians on a lot of this. But I really suspect that just generally, sexual abuse allegations, whether true or false, will tend to show up with somebody who is out of favor with those in power in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Like these Hollywood types, I suspect they did something, maybe something in contract negotiations, or they did something to tick off those with the money in Hollywood somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that happened prior to these sexual abuse allegations. Sexual abuse allegations will come up when they come up against someone who isn't out of favor. We just never hear about them. I just really think that who's guilty and who's not, I just think you just generally just can't trust the media on this stuff. I wouldn't be too surprised if a lot of the people in Hollywood who aren't even accused of a lot of this stuff are 10 times worse than what we know about from those who have been accused.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And we don't know about it because they're protected, because they're still in favor with those in power. So I'm not sure that the people that the media tells us to toss overboard are always actually the worst offenders,
I'm going to report Mr. Spark for harassment on YouTube.
Really? What?
Yes, for harassment or bullying.
Harassment or bullying. I wouldn't do that.
I did it already.
That no, that was not good, man. Don't use the harassment bullying crap on YouTube. That
He won't
that
leave us alone.
we don't, yeah, but if I wanted to ban him, I could just ban him, you know? But if you start using the bullying and harassment stuff on YouTube, that attracts attention. That attracts the wrong kind of attention from YouTube staff towards my channel and my live stream.
Well, you could just ban him then.
Yeah. All right. Well, you guys, I don't know when I can have another stream.
Should we go into the
I
Discord
hope
after
soon.
this?
Yeah, but I'll have to switch computers for that. But
Let's
yeah,
go to the clear trads.
I'll why not my Discord? Why not my Discord? I mean, my Discord has a voice chat.
I do have to report this video and flag it as well.
What video?
The stream. I think it's been very problematic.
All right. So we haven't really settled on a date for another stream. I guess it'll just randomly pop up again like this one did. All right.
More videos, Ben.
I need to get to making more videos soon. Not that there won't be any this week, but maybe next week, maybe the week after, sometime soon. All right. I'll see you guys.
Bye.